When my mother-in-law saw her family mansion being auctioned off for unpaid taxes, she called me sobbing, begging for help. I showed up to the courthouse that morning with my checkbook ready. I just didn't tell her I was there to buy it myself. For $185,000, I became the owner of the house, where she'd spent 10 years telling me I wasn't good enough for her daughter. And that was just the beginning of the justice she'd earned. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The first time I met Patricia Cameron, I should have known. Should have seen the warning signs written in her perfectly manicured garden and the way she looked at my 2004 Honda Civic, like it was roadkill on her pristine driveway. But I was 25 and stupid in love with her daughter Ashley, and young men in love have a remarkable talent for ignoring reality. It was a Sunday afternoon in late September, one of those rare Boston autumn days where the weather can't decide, between summer's last gasp and fall's first breath. Ashley had been nervous all morning, adjusting my collar, making sure I'd worn the nice shirt, the blue one from Target that she'd bought me because apparently my usual t-shirts wouldn't cut it for meeting her mother. "She's just particular," Ashley had said in the car, her hands twisting in her lap, "about certain things. But she'll love you once she gets to know you." The Cameron estate sat in Wellesley Hills, one of those neighborhoods where old money went to remind new money of its place. The house itself was a Georgian colonial that had probably been built when my grandparents were still in Mexico, all red brick and white columns with a circular driveway that could fit 6 cars comfortably. The lawn looked like it had been trimmed with scissors, each blade of grass standing at attention. I parked my Honda next to a silver Mercedes and a BMW that probably cost more than I'd make in 3 years as a high school math teacher. Ashley's hand found mine as we walked to the front door. "It'll be fine," she whispered. But she was saying it to herself, not me. Patricia Cameron opened the door before we could knock. She was 60 at the time, though she'd probably pay good money to have you guess 55, dressed in what I'd later learn was her casual afternoon outfit. Cream-colored slacks, a silk blouse, pearls that had belonged to her mother. Her blonde hair was styled in that timeless way, wealthy women perfect, not a strand out of place. "Ashley, darling," she said, pulling her daughter into a hug that looked practiced, like a pose for a photograph that wasn't being taken. Then her eyes landed on me, and I watched the calculation happen in real time. The assessment, the measurement, the quiet verdict. "You must be David," she said, extending her hand like she was granting me permission to touch royalty. Her grip was cold. "I've heard so much about you." The way she said it made "so much" sound like, unfortunately, too much. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Cameron," I said, using the formal address Ashley had coached me to use. "Thank you for having me. Patricia, please." She stepped aside to let us in. "Come in. Brandon is in the study, and dinner will be ready in an hour." The interior of the house matched its exterior, expensive, tasteful, and completely devoid of anything that suggested actual human beings lived there. Hardwood floors that gleamed like glass, antique furniture that looked too delicate to sit on, artwork on the walls that I recognized from my college art history class, the kind that museums display behind velvet ropes. We found Brandon in what Patricia called the study, though it was bigger than my entire apartment. He was sprawled on a leather couch watching a baseball game on a television that took up half the wall, beer in hand, despite it being 2 in the afternoon. "Hey, Ash," he said without getting up, barely glancing at me. "This the teacher." "Brandon, don't be rude," Patricia said, but her tone was indulgent, the way you'd scold a puppy for something you secretly found charming. "David, this is Ashley's brother, Brandon. He's taking a break between investments." Taking a break between investments was Patricia speak for unemployed and living in my house at 42, but I didn't know that yet. I stuck out my hand. Brandon looked at it like I'd offered him a dead fish, then eventually shook it with the minimum possible effort. "Math teacher, right?" he said. "That must be steady." The way he said steady made it sound like mediocre. Dinner was served in the formal dining room at exactly 6 o'clock, because Patricia Cameron didn't believe in flexible meal times or paper napkins. The table could have seated 12, but it was just the 4 of us, spread out like strangers at a bus stop, with enough silverware beside each plate to perform surgery. "So, David," Patricia said as a woman I hadn't met served the first course, "Ashley tells me you're teaching at a public school in Dorchester." "Yes, ma'am. Mitchell Middle School. I teach 8th grade algebra and geometry." "How noble." She took a small bite of salad, chewing thoughtfully. "My late husband always said that teaching was one of the most important professions. Underappreciated certainly, but important." The word underappreciated hung in the air like an accusation. "I enjoy it," I said. "The kids are smart, they just need someone to believe in them." "I'm sure they do." Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And the salary? I imagine it's quite modest." "Mom," Ashley said quietly, "I'm just making conversation, dear. David doesn't mind, do you, David?" I forced a smile. "It's about 45,000 a year. Enough to get by." "Enough to get by," Patricia repeated, like she was tasting the words and finding them lacking. "Well, that's certainly something." Brandon started at 90,000 in his first position after business school. Brandon had the decency to look uncomfortable, but he didn't correct his mother about the fact that he'd been fired from that position within 6 months. The dinner continued like that for 2 hours, Patricia asking questions that sounded polite, but felt like auditions, comparing me silently to some standard I couldn't see but knew I was failing. She talked about Ashley's father, who'd built his fortune in real estate development, who'd summered in the Hamptons and had season tickets to the symphony. She talked about the family legacy, about standards and expectations. She never once asked me about my family, about my parents, who'd immigrated from Mexico with nothing and built a life through backbreaking work, about my mother who'd cleaned houses so I could go to college, about my father who died when I was 19 and left me with his truck and his toolbox and a note that said, "Make something of yourself, mijo." I wouldn't have told her anyway. She didn't deserve to know. As Ashley and I were leaving that night, Patricia pulled me aside while Ashley was getting her coat. "David," she said, her voice low, "I want you to know that I only want what's best for my daughter." "Of course," I said. "She's been raised a certain way, with certain expectations about her life, her future." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. "I'm sure you understand." I understood, perfectly. I just didn't know yet how much worse it would get. In the car on the way home, Ashley was quiet, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "Your mom seems nice," I lied. Ashley laughed, but it sounded broken. "David, you don't have to do that." "Do what? Pretend you didn't notice?" She turned to look at me, tears glimmering in her eyes. "She was horrible to you. The comments about your salary, the comparisons to Brandon, all of it." I reached over and took her hand. "Hey, it's fine. First meetings are always awkward." "It's not fine. She's like that with everyone I date. It's why my last relationship ended. Tom couldn't take her constant criticism." "I'm not Tom," I said. "I know." She squeezed my hand. "That's what scares me. I really care about you, David, and I don't want her to ruin this." "She won't," I promised, believing it at the time. "I'm not going anywhere." 6 months later, I proposed to Ashley in the public garden downtown, with a ring I'd saved 8 months for, a modest half-carat diamond that felt like a fortune on a teacher's salary. She said yes immediately, threw her arms around my neck and cried happy tears that I tasted when I kissed her. When we told Patricia, she looked at the ring on Ashley's finger for a long moment. "How lovely," she finally said. "Small but lovely." I should have walked away then, should have taken Ashley's hand and built a life far away from Patricia Cameron and her poisonous judgments. But Ashley loved her mother, despite everything, and I loved Ashley, so I stayed. The wedding was 6 months later, at a country club Patricia had selected. She'd insisted on paying for it, which should have been generous, but felt more like a hostile takeover. Every decision, from the flowers to the music to the guest list, was filtered through Patricia's taste and Patricia's standards. "We simply cannot have your side of the family seated at the main tables, David," she'd said during one planning meeting, her voice pleasant as a knife wrapped in silk. "We have so many important guests attending. Your relatives will be much more comfortable at the back tables, don't you think? My mother, who'd ironed other people's clothes for 30 years to give me opportunities, sat at table 14, while Patricia's friends from the country club got the prime spots. My cousins and uncles, the people who'd celebrated every achievement of my life, were tucked in a corner near the kitchen doors. But Ashley was beautiful in her dress, and when I saw her walking down the aisle, none of it mattered. For those few hours I could forget that my in-laws saw me as an inconvenient accessory to their daughter's life. The years that followed established the pattern that would define our marriage. Sunday dinners at the Cameron house became mandatory, a weekly reminder of my inadequacy. Patricia never missed an opportunity to compare me to the husbands of Ashley's friends, men with important jobs at important companies, men who drove German cars and wore watches that cost more than my monthly salary. "Did you hear that Jennifer's husband made partner at his law firm?" Patricia would say, looking at me over her wine glass. Only 32 years old. So impressive. Marcus took Rebecca to Paris for their anniversary. Business class, naturally. "Have you and Ashley traveled anywhere lately, David? The Hendersons just bought a house in Newton. Such a lovely neighborhood. Much nicer than that apartment you two are renting." And always Brandon sat there, unemployed and living off his mother, saying nothing, contributing nothing, but somehow never the subject of Patricia's disappointment. Because Brandon was her son, and sons could do no wrong. But sons-in-law, especially ones who came from the wrong side of the tracks and taught algebra instead of managing hedge funds, they were fair game. Ashley would apologize after each dinner, crying in our car as we drove back to our small two-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know why she's like this." But she never confronted her mother, never stood up and said, "Stop talking to my husband that way." She'd just smooth things over, make excuses, beg me to be patient. "She's still grieving Dad," Ashley would say. "She doesn't mean it the way it sounds." But Patricia meant every word exactly the way it sounded. And I took it, year after year, because I loved my wife, and because I'd been raised to respect elders, even elders who didn't respect me back. What Patricia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had a secret. 3 years into our marriage, frustrated with the limitations of my teaching salary, and tired of feeling like a financial failure, I'd started developing educational software in my spare time. Just simple math games at first, programs to help struggling students visualize algebra concepts. I'd teach all day, come home to Ashley, and after she went to sleep, I'd code until 2 in the morning. The first program I sold was to a small educational publisher for $5,000. I put the money in a separate bank account Ashley didn't know about, not because I was hiding it from her, but because I wanted to prove something to myself first. I wanted to know I could succeed on my own terms before I shared it with anyone. The second program sold for $15,000, the third for $30,000. By our 5th anniversary, I'd sold enough software and educational licenses that I had $200,000 saved. But I was still teaching, still driving my Honda, still living in our modest apartment, still showing up to Sunday dinner, where Patricia would sigh about my lack of ambition. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment to tell Ashley about the money, about the business I was building, but the truth was more complicated. I was waiting to prove that I was worth something without the money, that my value, as a person, as a husband, wasn't measured in dollars. Then came that Sunday dinner, the one that changed everything, the dinner where Patricia decided that even my patience had limits. It was her 65th birthday party, October 15th, and she'd invited everyone who mattered in her social circle to the Cameron estate. 50 people milling around the house and garden, drinking champagne that cost more per bottle than I spent on groceries in a month. I was standing near the buffet table, balancing a plate of catered food I couldn't identify, when I heard Patricia's voice carrying across the garden. "Well, of course Brandon will inherit the house," she was saying to a cluster of her friends. "He's my son, after all, and a real man needs a real home, not some apartment in a teacher's neighborhood." I felt Ashley stiffen beside me. "Mom," she said quietly, walking over. "Can we not do this here?" Patricia turned, her smile bright and sharp. "Do what, darling?" "I'm just explaining my estate plans to the Hendersons. They were asking about the house." "You're leaving the house to Brandon?" Ashley's voice cracked. "You told me it would be mine someday. You said." "I said a lot of things, dear. But let's be realistic." Patricia gestured around at the mansion. at the gardens, at the lifestyle she'd spent 40 years cultivating. This home requires a certain level of maintenance, a certain standard of living. Brandon understands that. He was raised with it. And I wasn't. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. You were, sweetheart. But you made different choices. Patricia's gaze slid to me, cold and assessing. If you'd married better, perhaps we'd be having a different conversation. But David is a nice man, I'm sure, for what he is. He's just not house material. The words landed like a slap. Around us, conversation stopped. 50 pairs of eyes turned to watch the drama unfold. I felt heat crawling up my neck, anger mixing with humiliation in equal measure. Patricia, I said, my voice low and controlled. I think it's time for Ashley and me to go. Oh, don't be dramatic, David. She waved her hand dismissively. I'm just being honest. Someone has to be. You're a teacher. You make what, 50,000 a year now? Maybe 55 with your summers off. You can barely afford that apartment you're renting. How exactly would you maintain a property like this? The property taxes alone are 40,000 a year. I felt Ashley's hand on my arm, trying to pull me away, trying to defuse the situation. But something in me had shifted. 10 years. 10 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing insults, of being told in 1,000 subtle ways that I wasn't good enough. You're right, I said calmly. I can't afford a house like this. Not on a teacher's salary. Patricia smiled, satisfied. I'm glad we understand each other. But here's what I don't understand, Patricia. I set down my plate carefully. How can you afford it? Her smile faltered. Excuse me. The property taxes. 40,000 a year, like you said. Plus maintenance, utilities, landscaping. This house must cost at least 100,000 a year to run. How are you managing that on your late husband's pension? The color drained from her face. That's none of your business. You made it my business when you decided to humiliate me in front of your friends. I took a step closer, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. When was the last time you paid those property taxes, Patricia? Last year, 2 years ago, longer. David, stop, Ashley whispered. But I couldn't stop. Not anymore. See, the thing about being a teacher, Patricia, is that we're really good at math. And the numbers don't add up. They haven't for a while. Patricia's perfect composure cracked. Get out of my house. Gladly. I turned to Ashley. We're leaving. But before I could walk away, Patricia delivered her final blow, the one that would destroy any possibility of reconciliation. You know what your problem is, David, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You'll never be enough. Not for this family, not for this house, and not for my daughter. Ashley may have married down, but at least she had the sense to learn from the best. Her father understood what mattered. Money, status, legacy, things you'll never have. Mom, Ashley's voice broke. And I'll tell you something else, Patricia continued on a roll now past the point of caring. It's a shame your children will grow up in that apartment, surrounded by mediocrity, when they could have been raised here, in a real home, with real advantages. But I suppose some people are just destined to stay in their place. And yours, David, is not here. It never was. The garden was dead silent, 50 people staring, some embarrassed, some fascinated by the spectacle, all of them watching me to see what I'd do next. I looked at Ashley, at the tears streaming down her face, then at Patricia, at her righteous anger and her complete inability to see how deeply she'd just fractured her own family. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. This isn't my place. It never will be. I walked away then, through the garden, past the whispering guests, out to my Honda in the circular driveway. Ashley caught up with me as I was unlocking the door. David, wait, please. I'm so sorry. I'll talk to her. I'll make her apologize. Ashley, I cupped her face in my hands. Your mother will never apologize. She doesn't think she's wrong. Then we'll just stop going to dinners. We'll set boundaries. But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't want to set boundaries. She wanted her mother's approval. Still, always. And she wanted me to keep accepting the unacceptable so she wouldn't have to choose between us. I kissed her forehead. Go back to the party. We'll talk at home. The drive back to Dorchester had never felt longer. The sun was setting over Boston, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, and all I could think about was Patricia's face when I'd asked about the property taxes. The flash of panic before the anger. She wasn't paying them. I'd stake my life on it. That massive house, that symbol of everything I supposedly couldn't achieve, was probably drowning in debt. And Patricia was too proud to admit it, too invested in the image to let anyone see the cracks. I pulled into our apartment complex and sat in the car for a long moment, engine off, watching the sun disappear behind the buildings. Something had changed tonight. Some line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Patricia had spent 10 years making me feel small, inadequate, unworthy, and I'd let her because keeping peace seemed more important than keeping my dignity. But there was a difference between being patient and being a doormat, and I was done being stepped on. I didn't know it yet, but that October evening, that humiliating birthday party, was the beginning of the end of my silence, the end of accepting disrespect, and eventually the end of the Cameron family's reign over their perfect little kingdom. Because while Patricia Cameron was busy telling everyone I'd never amount to anything, I was quietly building something she'd never see coming. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patricia's face, heard her voice cutting through the garden party like a knife through silk. Your children will grow up surrounded by mediocrity. Ashley came home around midnight, her eyes red and swollen. She'd stayed at the party, playing damage control, apologizing to her mother's friends for the scene I'd caused. Because somehow in the Cameron family logic, I was the one who'd been inappropriate, not Patricia. She wants me to ask you to apologize, Ashley said, standing in our bedroom doorway. I was sitting at my laptop, staring at the screen without really seeing it. Apologize for what? For embarrassing her. For making accusations about her finances in front of everyone. Ashley's voice was small, defeated. David, please, can you just say you're sorry so we can move past this? I turned to look at my wife. Really look at her. She was 35 years old, still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. But there was something in her eyes I'd been seeing more and more lately. Exhaustion. The kind that came from spending your whole life trying to please someone who couldn't be pleased. No, I said quietly. David, Ashley, your mother told 50 people that our children, our hypothetical children, would be better off without me as a father. She said I'm not good enough for you, for this family, for anything. And you want me to apologize to her? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know what she said was awful, but she's my mother. She's all I have left of my family. You have me. I know I do, but can't I have both? Can't we just find a way to make this work? I wanted to tell her no, wanted to explain that some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. But looking at her face, seeing how desperately she needed me to fix this, I couldn't do it. Not yet. I need some air, I said, standing up. I'm going for a drive. David, it's midnight. I know what time it is. I grabbed my keys and left before she could argue. The October night was cold, that sharp New England cold that cuts through your jacket and reminds you that winter is coming whether you're ready or not. I drove aimlessly through Dorchester, past the shuttered bodegas and the streetlights flickering over empty sidewalks, trying to quiet the storm in my head. But my mind kept circling back to one moment. That flash of panic in Patricia's eyes when I'd asked about the property taxes. I pulled into a 24-hour diner on Dorchester Avenue, ordered coffee I didn't want, and pulled out my phone. It took me less than 5 minutes to find what I was looking for. The Norfolk County Registry of Deeds had an online database, public records, searchable by address. I typed in the Cameron Estates address in Wellesley Hills and waited while the ancient government website loaded. The property record appeared on my screen, all official stamps and legal language. Assessed value, $2.3 million. Annual property tax, $41,850. Last payment received, March 2016. I stared at the date. March 2016. It was now October 2019. 3.5 years. My fingers moved across the phone screen, pulling up a calculator. 3.5 years of unpaid taxes at 41,850 per year. That was $146,475 in back taxes, plus penalties and interest that probably pushed it closer to $180,000. And, according to Massachusetts law, after 3 years of delinquency, the town could seize the property and sell it at a tax auction to recover the debt. I set down my phone and looked out the diner window at the empty street. Patricia Cameron, the woman who'd spent a decade lecturing me about financial responsibility and success, was on the verge of losing everything. The house her husband had built, the status she'd clung to like a life raft, all of it was about to disappear. The coffee turned cold in my cup as I sat there, thinking. Part of me felt vindicated. Patricia had spent years looking down on me, and all that time she'd been drowning in debt she was too proud to admit. But another part of me, the part that still loved my wife and wanted peace for her sake, felt something heavier. Concern. Because if Patricia lost that house, Ashley would be devastated. I paid for the coffee and drove home. Ashley was asleep on the couch, still in her dress from the party, her phone clutched in one hand. I covered her with a blanket and went to our bedroom. But I didn't sleep. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do with information I wasn't supposed to have. The next morning was Monday. I taught 3 classes on autopilot, my mind elsewhere. During my lunch period, I called the Wellesley tax collector's office from my empty classroom, pretending to be a prospective buyer, inquiring about properties. I'm interested in a property on Monument Street, I said to the woman who answered. The Cameron estate. I wanted to know if there were any liens or tax issues I should be aware of. There was typing on the other end. That property has significant tax delinquency. It's actually scheduled for auction on December 9th. My heart stopped. This December, as in 2 months from now. Yes, sir. The owner has been notified. If the debt isn't cleared by November 15th, the auction proceeds as scheduled. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, thank you. I hung up and sat in the silence of my classroom. December 9th, less than 2 months away. And Patricia hadn't said a word, hadn't asked for help, hadn't admitted the problem. She'd just kept pretending everything was fine, while her world crumbled around her. I thought about telling Ashley, but I already knew how that conversation would go. She'd panic, call her mother, and Patricia would somehow make it my fault for snooping. Or worse, Ashley would beg me to help, to loan them the money, to save the house at the cost of everything I'd built. No, I needed more information first. That evening, I did something I'm not proud of. I used Ashley's laptop while she was in the shower and logged into her email. We'd always known each other's passwords, one of those things couples do when they trust each other. I told myself I was just checking, just making sure I wasn't overreacting. But there, in her inbox, was an email from 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, Mother's financial situation. I opened it. It was a conversation between Ashley and Brandon, forwarded from an email Brandon had sent to their mother's estate attorney. Brandon, what are our options here? Can we contest the tax sale? Attorney, I'm afraid not. The town has followed proper legal procedure. Unless the debt is cleared, the auction will proceed. I strongly advise your mother to consider selling the property privately. Before that happens, she'd likely get more money that way. Brandon, she'll never agree to that. The house is everything to her. Ashley, there has to be another way. What if we took out a loan? Brandon, against what collateral, Ash? Mom's maxed out her credit. The house is underwater. I've got nothing. And your husband's a teacher. Ashley, don't. Brandon, I'm just saying, if he'd been more successful, maybe we wouldn't be in this position. Dad would have fixed this. My hands were shaking as I read. They'd known. Ashley had known for weeks, maybe longer, and she hadn't told me. She'd been keeping her mother's secret, while Brandon sat in his mother's house doing nothing and somehow still managed to blame me for not being successful enough to solve problems that weren't mine to solve. I heard the shower turn off. I closed the email and shut the laptop, my mind racing. Ashley came out wrapped in a towel, saw my face. What's wrong? For a moment, I almost told her everything, almost laid it all out. The tax records I'd found, the email I'd read, the lies that had been stacking up like bricks in a wall between us. But something stopped me, some instinct that said once I played that card, there'd be no taking it back. Nothing, I said, just tired. She studied my face, and I wondered if she could see through me the way I was starting to see through her. But she just nodded and went to get dressed. I lay in bed that night listening to Ashley's breathing, feeling like I was sleeping next to a stranger. She'd been carrying this secret for weeks, protecting her mother, protecting Brandon, while I was the enemy, the failure, the one not successful enough to save them from problems they'd created themselves. The anger burned low and steady in my chest, not the hot flash of rage from the party, but something colder, more calculated. Patricia wanted to play games about who was worthy of her precious family legacy. Fine. But she'd picked the wrong person to underestimate. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an expert on tax lien sales. I learned everything I could about Massachusetts real estate law, about auction procedures, about how foreclosed properties worked. I researched comparable homes in Wellesley Hills, studied recent sale prices, calculated what the Cameron estate might actually be worth versus what Patricia thought it was worth. And I made a decision. I called my accountant, a guy named Jerry Chen, who'd been helping me manage my software business profits for the past 3 years. We met for lunch at a Chinese restaurant in Quincy. I need to set up an LLC, I told him over Kung Pao chicken. Something clean, separate from my other business. No obvious connection to my name. Jerry raised an eyebrow. What are we doing here, David? I'm buying a house. And you don't want anyone to know it's you buying it. Not until after the purchase is complete. He studied me for a long moment. Jerry was 52, had been doing taxes and business consulting for 30 years, and had probably heard every scheme imaginable. But he just nodded. Okay, we can do that. We'll set up a limited liability company with a neutral name. You'll be the managing member, but that information won't be public. When did you need this? 2 weeks ago, Jerry laughed. I'll have it done by Friday. And Jerry, I need to know the exact process for bidding on a tax lien property. Jesus, David, you're going to a tax auction? Maybe. He set down his fork. Look, I'm your accountant, not your therapist. But tax auctions are serious business. The properties are sold as is, no inspections, no backing out. You show up with certified funds and you bid against people who do this for a living. It's not like buying a house through a realtor. I know. And if you win, you own the property immediately. Which means if someone's living there, you're responsible for evicting them. It can get ugly, David. Really ugly. I met his eyes. I'm counting on it. Jerry shook his head but pulled out his laptop. All right, let me walk you through how this works. By the time lunch was over, I knew everything I needed to know. The auction would be held at the Wellesley Town Hall on December 9th at 10 in the morning. Bidders had to register in advance with proof of funds. Minimum opening bid would be set at the tax debt amount, around $185,000 based on my calculations. Payment had to be made that day by certified check or wire transfer, and once you won, the property was yours. No returns, no second chances, no mercy. I spent the next week preparing. I liquidated some investments, consolidated my accounts, made sure I had access to $250,000 in liquid funds just to be safe. I told Ashley I was working on a big software contract that required upfront investment, which was technically true, just not the whole truth. She seemed distracted anyway, constantly on her phone, whispering conversations with her mother that ended when I walked into the room. The distance between us was growing daily, this gulf of secrets and resentments we'd both stopped trying to bridge. 3 weeks before the auction, I was grading papers at our kitchen table when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this David Reyes? Yes, who's calling? My name is Patricia Morrison. I'm a reporter with the Boston Globe. I'm working on a story about tax foreclosures in wealthy suburbs, and your mother-in-law's property came up in my research. I was wondering if you'd be willing to comment. My blood went cold. A reporter calling me about Patricia's house. How did you get my number? Public records. You're listed as a family contact in some of the court documents. Look, I'm not trying to cause problems. I'm just reporting on a trend. Wealthy homeowners getting underwater during the recession and hiding it from their communities. It's a human interest angle. I have no comment. Mr. Reyes, I've done some research on your mother-in-law, Patricia Cameron, widow of Robert Cameron, prominent developer, living in a multi-million-dollar home while owing nearly $200,000 in back taxes. Meanwhile, her son lives with her rent-free, and her daughter married a public school teacher. I'm just trying to understand the family dynamics here. Ms. Morrison, with all respect, you don't know anything about my family. Then help me understand, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Mrs. Cameron has spent years living beyond her means while looking down on others. That's a story people want to read. I closed my eyes. If this reporter published her story, Patricia's carefully constructed image would shatter. All her country club friends, all the people she'd been hiding the truth from, they'd all know. The humiliation would be complete. Part of me wanted to let it happen, wanted Patricia to experience public shame, the way she'd shamed me at that birthday party. But I thought about Ashley, about how a story like this would destroy her. "Don't publish this," I said quietly. "Why not?" "Because it's not news. It's just a family going through hard times. They don't deserve to be publicly humiliated for it. Even though Mrs. Cameron publicly humiliated you. I talked to some people who were at that birthday party, Mr. Reyes. I heard about what she said to you. So the story was already out there, spreading through Patricia's social circle like a virus. The birthday party confrontation had been noticed, remembered, discussed. Patricia's perfect facade was already cracking, and now a reporter was ready to smash it completely. "Ms. Morrison, please, I'm asking you not to publish this story. Not for my mother-in-law's sake. For my wife's." There was a long silence on the other end. "All right," she finally said. "I'll hold the story. For now. But Mr. Reyes, if this goes to auction and there's drama, I'm covering it. Fair warning." She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling the weight of what was coming. December 9th was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks until everything changed, one way or another. That night, Ashley got a call from her mother at 8:30. I was in the bedroom, pretending to read, but I could hear Ashley's voice from the living room, strained, defensive, pleading. "Mom, you need to tell him. He can help. He has money saved." A pause. "I know you don't want to, but we're running out of time. The auction is in 3 weeks. If you don't do something, you'll lose everything." Another pause, longer this time. "No, I haven't told him about the emails." I didn't want him to feel pressured. I set down my book and walked to the living room doorway. Ashley saw me and her face went pale. "Mom, I have to go. We'll talk tomorrow." She hung up quickly. Too quickly. Who was that?" I asked, even though I knew. "My mother. She's having some financial issues. With the house." "What kind of issues?" Ashley's hands twisted in her lap. "Property taxes. She's behind on them. She just told me tonight." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, I almost believed it myself. But I'd read those emails. I knew she'd known for weeks, maybe months. And she was still lying to me about it, still protecting her mother, still choosing Patricia's pride over our marriage. "How far behind?" I asked. "I don't know exactly." She wouldn't give me details. "But David," she looked up at me with those eyes I used to trust completely. "She might lose the house. There's going to be an auction. Is there any way we could help her?" And there it was. The ask I'd been waiting for. The moment where I was supposed to step up, empty my savings, rescue Patricia from the consequences of her own choices. Prove, once and for all, that I was good enough for this family by bankrupting myself for people who'd spent a decade treating me like hired help. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 12 years, who was asking me to save the woman who'd publicly declared I wasn't fit to raise our children. "No," I said quietly. Ashley's face crumpled. "David, please. It's my childhood home. All my memories of my father are in that house. Your mother has spent 10 years telling me I'm not good enough, that I'm too poor, too common, too unsuccessful. She told 50 people I'm not worthy of being a father. And now you want me to give her nearly $200,000. It wouldn't be giving. It would be a loan. Ashley, your mother can't even pay her property taxes. How exactly is she going to pay me back? We'd figure it out. As a family. We're not a family to your mother. I'm the help that won't stay in his place. That's not fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you defending me at that party. Fair would have been you telling your mother years ago that she couldn't talk about your husband that way. Fair would have been you being honest with me instead of hiding this for weeks. She froze. How did you know? I've known for 2 weeks, Ashley. I found the tax records. I read the emails between you and Brandon. I know everything. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You went through my email, and you lied to my face, repeatedly, while your brother blamed me for not being successful enough to fix your mother's problems. David! I'm going for a drive. I grabbed my keys and left before she could respond. Outside, the November night was freezing, frost already forming on car windshields. I drove to a park near Jamaica Pond and sat on a bench overlooking the water, watching my breath fog in the cold air. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerry Chen. LLC is set up, paperwork attached. You're officially the managing member of Riverside Holdings, LLC. Whatever you're planning, be careful. I opened the attachment. There it was, official and legal. A company that existed solely to buy one specific piece of property. A company that no one would connect to me until it was too late. December 9th was 18 days away. 18 days until I walked into that town hall with a certified check and changed everything. The question was whether I actually had the courage to do it. My phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I played it. Mr. Reyes, this is Thomas Brennan from Wellesley Town Hall. I'm calling to confirm your registration for the tax lien auction on December 9th. You're registered under Riverside Holdings, LLC for the property at 847 Monument Street. Please call me back to confirm you'll be attending and to discuss payment procedures. I stared at the phone. I'd registered for the auction 2 weeks ago, when this was still just an idea. A fantasy of revenge I wasn't sure I'd actually follow through with. But now it was real. They were expecting me, expecting Riverside Holdings, LLC to show up with money and intentions. And nobody, not Patricia, not Ashley, not Brandon, had any idea what was coming. I saved the voicemail and walked back to my car. The drive home felt different this time. Purposeful, decided. I'd spent 10 years being patient, being understanding, being the good guy who took abuse for the sake of peace. But there was a difference between being good and being weak, and I was done being weak. When I got home, Ashley was still awake, sitting on the couch with her phone. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. David, we need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Please. My mother is desperate. She called me 6 times tonight. She's panicking about the auction. If she loses that house, I don't know what she'll do. I sat down across from her, maintaining distance. Ashley, let me ask you something. If your mother keeps the house, will anything change? Will she suddenly start treating me with respect? Will she apologize for the things she said? Will you stop hiding things from me to protect her feelings? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know. That's what I thought. So you're just going to let her lose everything, out of spite? No, I said carefully. I'm going to let her face the consequences of her own choices. That's not spite. That's reality. Ashley wiped her eyes. I never thought you could be this cold. And I never thought you'd choose your mother over your husband. But here we are. She didn't have an answer for that. We sat in the silence of our apartment, the space between us feeling like an ocean. Somewhere in Wellesley Hills, Patricia Cameron was probably awake too, staring at auction notices and unpaid bills, her perfect world collapsing around her. December 9th was 17 days away, and I'd already made my choice. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a house where the walls were slowly closing in. Ashley stopped sleeping in our bedroom, choosing the couch instead, her phone constantly buzzing with calls from her mother. I'd hear her whispering late into the night, the desperate cadence of someone trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. She tried everything to change my mind. Tears, silence, bargaining, appeals to memories of better times that I was starting to realize had never actually been that good. What about when we first got married? She said one evening, standing in the kitchen doorway while I made dinner for one. My mom threw us that party, remember? She gave us her grandmother's china. She gave us 12 place settings of china we were too poor to deserve, I corrected, stirring pasta sauce. And she reminded me of that fact at least once a month for the next 5 years. You're twisting everything. No, Ashley. I'm finally seeing everything clearly. There's a difference. She tried a new approach the next day. Showed up at my school during my lunch period, something she'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I was eating a sandwich in my classroom when she knocked on the door, looking small and desperate in the doorway. "David, I talked to a financial advisor," she said, closing the door behind her. "There are options. We could take out a home equity loan against our apartment. We rent, Ashley. We don't own. Then a personal loan. Or we could cash out your retirement account. There has to be something." I set down my sandwich and looked at my wife, really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly, the desperation etched into every line of her face. And I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my resolve, something else. The last remnants of hope that this marriage could survive what was coming. "Ashley, let me tell you what would happen if I gave your mother that money. She'd take it, keep the house, and within 6 months she'd be right back where she started. Because she hasn't changed her spending. She'd still be trying to maintain a lifestyle she can't afford. And in 2 years, maybe 3, we'd be having this exact same conversation. Except this time we'd be broke, too. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because your mother has had 10 years to change her behavior, 10 years to live within her means, and she chose not to. She chose to keep up appearances while the foundation rotted underneath. That's not bad luck, Ashley. That's bad decisions. So you're going to punish her for bad decisions by letting her lose everything. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. A group of students was playing basketball during their lunch period, their shouts and laughter drifting through the glass. Simple, uncomplicated, free. I'm not punishing anyone, I said quietly. I'm just finally refusing to be punished myself. Ashley left without another word. Through my classroom window, I watched her walk to her car, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Part of me wanted to run after her, take it all back, be the man she needed me to be. But a stronger part knew that man had died at that birthday party. The man she married would have already emptied his bank account to save her mother. The man I was becoming knew better. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "David, it's Brandon." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it like it had grown teeth. In 12 years of knowing him, Brandon Cameron had never called me. Not once. "Brandon," I said carefully, "what can I do for you? Look, I know we've never been close, but Ashley told me you're refusing to help with Mom's situation, and I thought maybe we could talk. Man to man. Man to man. From someone who'd never worked a real day in his life, who'd been living off his mother for 42 years, who'd sat silent through a decade of his mother insulting me while eating food I'd helped pay for through the mortgage assistance I'd been secretly giving Ashley's family. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "I'm listening," I said. "The thing is, David, I get it. Mom can be difficult. She's set in her ways and she says things she doesn't mean. But family forgives family, right? That's what we do. We overlook the rough patches." "Rough patches," I repeated. Is that what you call 10 years of telling me I'm not good enough?" "She never said that, Brandon. At her birthday party 6 weeks ago, she told 50 people that I wasn't fit to be a father to my own children. She was upset. You embarrassed her by bringing up the finances in front of everyone. I asked a question. She's the one who made it a scene." He sighed, and I could hear the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Drinking in the middle of the afternoon. Some things never changed. "Look, David, I'm going to be straight with you. We need that money. Not want, need. Mom's drowning, and if you don't help, she's going to lose everything Dad built. Your dad built it. Not her, not you, and definitely not me. But you could save it. Ashley says you have savings. Some software thing you've been working on. How much do you have? 50,000? 100,000? The question confirmed what I'd suspected. Ashley had been sharing information about my finances with her family, information I'd specifically asked her to keep private, because I knew this exact situation would happen. They'd see me as a piggy bank to break in case of emergency. That's not your business, Brandon. Come on, David. If you had the money and you didn't help, what kind of man does that make you? I laughed. Actually, laughed. What kind of man? Let me answer that with a question. What kind of man are you, Brandon? You're 42 years old, living in your mother's house, contributing nothing while she drowns in debt. You haven't had a real job in what? 15 years. But somehow you think you have the moral authority to lecture me about family responsibility. That's different. I'm helping Mom by being here for her. You're helping yourself to free rent while the house collapses around you. And when it's gone, you'll find another woman to support you, because that's what you do. You're a parasite, Brandon, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The silence on the other end was deafening. When Brandon finally spoke, his voice had changed. Harder, uglier. You're going to regret this, David. Mom has friends, important friends, people who can make your life very difficult. That teaching job you're so proud of, that could disappear. Your reputation in this city, gone. You have no idea what you're starting. Actually, Brandon, I have a very clear idea. And bring it on. I hung up and sat in the sudden quiet of my apartment. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. The mask was off now. No more polite pretenses, no more family dinners where we all pretended to get along. This was war, declared openly, and I was ready for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jerry Chen. Auction is in 12 days. You still want to go through with this? I typed back. More than ever. The next morning, I woke up to find Ashley gone. Not just out for groceries gone, but packed a bag and left gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter, written in her careful handwriting. David, I'm staying with my mother for a while. I can't watch you do this to my family. I thought I knew who you were, but the man refusing to help my mother isn't the man I married. I need time to think about what this means for us. I read it twice, then set it down carefully beside my coffee maker. No anger, no surprise, just a hollow confirmation of something I'd known for weeks. When it came down to choosing sides, Ashley would always choose her mother, even when her mother was wrong, even when it cost her everything. I went to work, taught my classes, graded papers, went through the motions of normal life while my marriage disintegrated. During my planning period, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You should know." I opened it. "Mr. Reyes, you don't know me, but I was a guest at Patricia Cameron's birthday party. I've been friends with Patricia for 20 years, and I need to tell you something that's been weighing on my conscience. After you left that night, Patricia spent 2 hours talking about you to anyone who would listen. She said things that went far beyond what you heard in the garden. She told people you were financially unstable, that you'd borrowed money from Ashley multiple times, that she was worried about your mental health. She said your family had a history of substance abuse and that she'd tried to warn Ashley not to marry you. None of this is my business, and maybe I shouldn't be writing this. But after hearing what she said and then learning that you're the one who's been financially supporting them all these years, I felt sick. You deserve to know the truth about what she's been saying behind your back. A friend." I read the email 3 times, each pass making my blood run colder. Patricia hadn't just insulted me to my face. She'd been conducting a whispering campaign behind my back for years, poisoning my reputation with her friends, building a narrative where I was the problem, the burden, the risk to her daughter's well-being. And I'd been paying their mortgage the entire time. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then to Jerry Chen, with a note. "Document this. We might need it." That afternoon, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove to Wellesley Hills and parked across the street from the Cameron estate. I wanted to see it one more time before everything changed. Wanted to remember exactly what I was fighting for, or against. The house looked the same as always. Perfect. Intimidating. A monument to wealth and status that was actually built on credit and lies. The lawn was still immaculate, probably costing $300 a month to maintain while property taxes went unpaid. The Christmas decorations were already up, expensive and tasteful, creating an illusion of prosperity that crumbled under scrutiny. While I sat there, a black Lexus pulled into the driveway. Patricia got out, loaded down with shopping bags from Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus. Behind her, Brandon emerged from the house to help carry them inside. Both of them laughing about something, carefree, completely unconcerned about the auction that was 11 days away. Because they thought they'd won. Thought Ashley had broken me down. That family loyalty would override common sense. That I'd show up with a check like the good little ATM I'd always been. I pulled out my phone and called Jerry Chen. "How much money do I need to bring to the auction?" I asked. "The minimum bid will be around $185,000 for the tax debt, but you should bring at least $250,000 in case there's competition. And David, once you do this, there's no going back. You understand that, right?" "I understand. Your marriage is probably over." "I know. Patricia will hate you forever. She already does. At least now I won't be paying for the privilege." Jerry was quiet for a moment. "All right. I'll have everything ready. The certified check, the LLC paperwork, all of it. December 9th at 10 a.m., Wellesley Town Hall. I'll be there." I hung up and took one last look at the house. My phone rang again. This time a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "David Reyes." "Yes, this is Dr. Caroline Winters. I'm a psychiatrist, and I received a very concerning call today from Patricia Cameron. She's worried about your mental state and asked if I could reach out to you." I went very still. "I'm sorry, what?" Mrs. Cameron expressed concerns about potential depression, erratic behavior, and financial stress. She mentioned you've been making threats toward her family and refusing to seek help. "I want you to know that I have resources available, if you'd like to talk to someone." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Patricia wasn't just spreading rumors. She was actively trying to build a case that I was mentally unstable, setting up a paper trail that she could use later if she needed to discredit me or worse. "Dr. Winters," I said carefully, "I appreciate your concern, but Patricia Cameron is not an objective source about my mental health. In fact, I'd argue she's the one creating an unhealthy situation by spreading false information about me to medical professionals. I understand family conflicts can be complicated, Mr. Reyes, but for my records, are you currently experiencing any suicidal ideation or plans to harm yourself or others?" "No, I'm not depressed, I'm not suicidal, and I'm not a danger to anyone. I'm just a man who's finally learned to say no to people who've been taking advantage of him." "Mrs. Cameron mentioned you've been behaving erratically at work, showing up at her home uninvited. I drove past her house once 30 minutes ago and parked on a public street. And my principal would be happy to confirm that my work performance is exemplary. Dr. Winters, I don't know what Patricia told you, but she's manipulating you as part of a campaign to discredit me. I suggest you document this call carefully, because when the truth comes out, you're going to want a record of exactly what she claimed." I hung up before she could respond. My heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding my system. Patricia had escalated. She wasn't just spreading rumors anymore. She was actively trying to paint me as crazy, dangerous, someone whose word couldn't be trusted, which meant she knew something was coming. Somehow she'd figured out that I wasn't going to cave. I started my car and drove straight to my attorney's office. Mark Rodriguez had handled my business contracts for 3 years, and if ever there was a time I needed legal counsel, it was now. Mark listened to everything: the birthday party, the financial manipulation, the whisper campaign, the call from the psychiatrist. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled low. "David, you need to understand something. What Patricia is doing right now, calling psychiatrists and making false claims about your mental health, that could potentially be defamation. But it's also smart from her perspective. She's creating a narrative where anything you do at that auction looks like the actions of someone who's unstable. So, what do? Document everything. Save every email, every voicemail, every text. Get that email from the party guest notarized if possible. And, David," he looked at me seriously, "be very, very careful about your behavior between now and the auction. Don't go near that house again. Don't engage with Patricia or Brandon. Give them nothing they can use against you. And Ashley," he grimaced, "that's trickier. She's your wife, so legally you can communicate with her. But understand that anything you say to her might get back to Patricia. You need to decide how much you trust her right now." The answer to that question was painfully clear. I didn't trust Ashley at all, not anymore. I spent the next week living like a monk. Work, home, nothing else. I didn't drive by the Cameron estate. Didn't respond to Ashley's occasional texts asking me to reconsider. Didn't answer calls from numbers I didn't recognize in case it was Patricia or her friends. Instead, I prepared. I organized every bank statement, every mortgage record, every piece of evidence showing the money I'd given them over the years. I created a detailed timeline of every insult, every slight, every moment of disrespect. And I made copies of everything, storing them in 3 different locations, including Jerry Chen's office safe. 6 days before the auction, Ashley came by the apartment while I was at work. I knew because she'd taken her things. Her clothes, her toiletries, the photos from her side of the bedroom, all of it gone. She'd left her key on the kitchen counter with another note. David, I've hired an attorney. I think we both know where this is heading. I'll always love the man I thought you were, but I can't be married to the man you've become. I hope someday you'll understand what you've destroyed. I read the note standing in our half-empty bedroom, surrounded by the empty spaces where her life used to be, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret. Just a cold clarity that this had been inevitable from the moment I'd met Patricia Cameron 14 years ago. The marriage had been dying slowly for years. I'd just been too loyal, too patient, too willing to accept unacceptable treatment in the name of keeping peace. Patricia's birthday party hadn't killed it. That had just been the moment I'd finally acknowledged what was already dead. I called Jerry Chen. Ashley's filing for divorce. Probably for the best, he said quietly. At least she can't claim you're using marital assets to buy the house if you're legally separated. There's that silver lining I was looking for. David, I have to ask one more time. Are you sure about this? Once you walk into that auction, there's no going back. You'll own Patricia's house, you'll be divorced, and you'll have made enemies of your wife's entire family. I looked around my empty apartment at the spaces where Ashley's presence used to soften the edges, and thought about the past 14 years. The insults I'd swallowed, the disrespect I'd tolerated, the money I'd spent trying to buy acceptance from people who were never going to give it. Jerry, I said, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. 5 days before the auction, I got a call from Michael Chen, one of my oldest friends from college. He was a real estate developer now, someone who understood property and money and the games people played with both. David, I heard through the grapevine about what's happening with your in-laws. Is it true you're going to the auction? Word travels fast. In real estate circles, always. Listen, I want to give you some advice. That property is worth about $2.3 million in the current market. If you get it for $185,000, you're looking at instant equity of over $2 million. But here's the thing. Patricia and Brandon are living there, which means you'll have to evict them. Have you thought about what that's going to look like? Every day for the past 3 weeks. David, I know Patricia treated you like garbage, but evicting your mother-in-law from her home, the optics are brutal, man. People are going to judge you for that. Let them judge. I've been judged by Patricia for 14 years. At least this time I'll deserve it. Michael was quiet for a moment. All right, but do me a favor. If you win that auction, call me before you file the eviction. I might have some ideas about how to handle this in a way that's less nuclear. I'll think about it, but I wouldn't, because nuclear was exactly what this situation required. Patricia had spent years treating me like I was beneath her, like my presence contaminated her perfect world. She'd spread lies about me, tried to paint me as mentally unstable, and turned my own wife against me. And all of that would have been survivable, forgivable even, if she'd shown one single moment of remorse. One acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong about me. But Patricia Cameron didn't do remorse. She did pride. She did status. She did maintaining appearances even as everything crumbled. And in 4 days, I was going to show her exactly what happened when you built your entire life on a foundation of borrowed money and borrowed time. 3 days before the auction, I got an email from an address I recognized. Patricia Morrison, the Boston Globe reporter who'd called weeks ago about the tax foreclosure story. Mr. Reyes, I'm still sitting on the story about the Cameron family finances, but I wanted to give you a heads up that I've been contacted by 2 other media outlets who are also looking into this, and I can't hold them off forever. If something newsworthy happens at that auction, it's going to be covered, Just wanted you to know what you're walking into. PM newsworthy. That was one way to describe what I was planning. I wondered what the headline would be. Teacher buys mother-in-law's house at auction. 14 years of abuse. End in financial revenge. The quiet man who finally stopped being quiet. I didn't care anymore. Let them write whatever they wanted. The truth would come out eventually, and I had 14 years of documentation to back it up. The night before the auction, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What if someone else outbid me? What if Patricia found the money at the last minute? What if this whole thing backfired, and I became the villain of a story where I'd been the victim all along? At 2 in the morning, I got up and made coffee, sat at my kitchen table with the LLC papers, the certified check paperwork, and a list of everything I needed to bring tomorrow. Driver's license, proof of funds, registration confirmation, the emotional armor I'd been building for 3 weeks. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning tomorrow. You're making a huge mistake. Last chance to do the right thing. P. Patricia. She'd somehow figured it out. Maybe Ashley had pieced it together and warned her. Maybe someone at the town hall had leaked information. It didn't matter. She knew, and she was scared. I typed back one word. No. Her response came immediately. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. I'll make sure of it. Looking forward to it, I replied, and blocked her number. At 9:30 the next morning, I stood in the parking lot of Wellesley Town Hall, watching people filter inside. Real estate investors mostly, men and women in casual clothes with folders full of research, treating this like any other business transaction. A few lawyers, a couple of curious spectators. And standing near the entrance, looking pale and desperate in her expensive coat, was Ashley. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other across the parking lot. Two people who'd shared a life now facing each other like strangers. She took a step toward me, then stopped. I walked over to her. David, please don't do this, she said, her voice breaking. We can still fix this. I talked to Mom last night. She's willing to apologize, to make things right. Ashley, your mother texted me at 2 in the morning threatening me. That's not someone who wants to make things right. She's scared. People say things they don't mean when they're scared. People say what they mean when they think they can get away with it. Your mother has said exactly what she means about me for 14 years. The only thing that's changed is she's finally facing consequences. So, this is about revenge, about getting even. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved enough to tolerate years of abuse for, and tried to find the right words. Ashley, this isn't about revenge, it's about value. Your mother has spent 14 years teaching me that I have no value as a person, that my money was good enough, but I wasn't, and I finally learned the lesson. So now I'm taking back my money and my dignity, and your mother gets to learn what it's like to have neither. Tears streamed down Ashley's face. If you do this, we're done. You know that, right? There's no coming back from this. I know. And you're willing to throw away our marriage. Everything we built. Ashley, you threw away our marriage the moment you chose your mother over me. I'm just finally admitting it. She slapped me then, hard enough that my cheek burned, hard enough that the few people near us turned to stare. I didn't react, didn't raise my hand to my face, just stood there looking at her while she cried. I hate you, she whispered. I hate you for making me choose. I hate you for not being the man who would save my mother. I hate you for turning into someone I don't recognize. Good, I said quietly, because the man you married was a doormat, and I'm not him anymore. I walked past her into the town hall, leaving my wife sobbing in the parking lot. Inside, the auction room was filling up. 25 people, maybe, all waiting for the proceedings to start. I found a seat near the front, pulled out my registration paperwork, and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, the auctioneer stepped up to the podium, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses and an air of having done this 1,000 times before. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Norfolk County Tax Lien Auction. We have 3 properties being sold today due to tax delinquency. All sales are final, as is, with no warranties or inspections. Payment must be made today by certified check or wire transfer. Is everyone clear on the terms? Murmurs of agreement around the room. Excellent. Our first property is 847 Monument Street, Wellesley Hills. Georgian Colonial, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 4,200 square feet, on 1.3 acres. Assessed value $2.3 million. Tax delinquency of $185,470. Do I have an opening bid of $185,470? I raised my hand. Here, the auctioneer nodded. We have $185,470. Do I have $190,000? Silence. I felt my heart pounding. Was it really going to be this easy? Going once at $185,470. The door at the back of the room burst open. Patricia Cameron stood in the doorway, her face flushed, Brandon behind her. She looked around the room frantically until her eyes landed on me, and the expression on her face when she realized who'd been bidding made every insult, every slight, every moment of the past 14 years worth it. "Stop!" she screamed. "You can't do this! That's my house!" The auctioneer looked up calmly. "Ma'am, this is a legal proceeding. If you have funds to clear the tax debt, you can do so before I complete the sale. Otherwise, please take a seat or leave the room." "David!" Patricia's voice broke. She stumbled toward me. "David, please. You can't buy my house. That's my home. My husband built that home." I looked at her without emotion. "Your husband built it. You destroyed it. There's a difference. I'll pay you back, whatever you want. Name your price." "My price was respect, Patricia. 14 years ago, you decided I wasn't worth it." The auctioneer cleared her throat. "Ma'am, do you have funds to clear the debt?" Patricia's face crumpled. "No, but he does. He has money. He could pay this right now. He's doing this to hurt me. Ma'am, I need you to either take a seat or exit the room." Brandon grabbed his mother's arm, trying to pull her back, but Patricia jerked away from him. She stood in the middle of the auction room, shaking with rage and desperation, and I saw her the way she really was for the first time. Not powerful, not intimidating, just a frightened old woman who'd bet everything on a bluff and lost. "Going once at $185,470, the auctioneer repeated. "Please," Patricia whispered. "David, please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll tell everyone I was wrong about you. Just please don't take my house." Going twice at $185,470, I stood up and turned to face her fully. "Patricia, you told 50 people I wasn't fit to be a father to children I don't even have yet. You spent years spreading lies about my character, my finances, and my mental health. You called a psychiatrist and tried to have me evaluated. You turned my own wife against me, and now you want mercy." "I was wrong," she sobbed. "I was wrong about everything. You're a good man, David. I see that now. Please." Sold for $185,470 to Riverside Holdings, LLC. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the room. Patricia collapsed. Actually collapsed, her legs giving out underneath her. Brandon caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her into a chair while she wailed like someone had died. Maybe something had. Her pride, her status, her carefully constructed world where people like me knew our place and stayed there. The auctioneer was talking to me about payment procedures, about transfer paperwork, about taking possession. But I was watching Patricia Cameron, watching her perfect facade shatter into pieces that could never be reassembled. And I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no guilt, just a cold, clean sense that justice had finally been served. Outside, cameras were flashing. Patricia Morrison from the Globe stood near the entrance with a notebook. Other reporters I didn't recognize had somehow gotten wind of the story, but they'd have to wait. I had a house to claim, and a mother-in-law to evict. The town clerk's office was fluorescent lit and bureaucratic, the kind of place where lives changed with the stroke of a pen and nobody blinked. I sat across from a woman named Margaret Walsh who'd probably processed 1,000 property transfers and would process 1,000 more, without remembering a single face. "Mr. Reyes, I'll need your LLC documentation, your identification, and the certified check," she said, barely looking up from her computer screen. I slid the papers across her desk. The check felt heavy in my hand, heavier than paper should feel. $185,470, written out to the town of Wellesley, the price of justice, or revenge, depending on who you asked. Margaret examined everything with the detached efficiency of someone who'd seen every possible human drama play out in property transactions. She typed, stamped papers, made copies. The mundane mechanics of transferring ownership of a life someone else had built. The property transfers to Riverside Holdings, LLC, effective immediately, she said, handing me a thick folder. This is your deed, your tax clearance, and your ownership certificate. As of now, you are the legal owner of 847 Monument Street. Do you understand that there are current occupants residing at the property? I do. You'll need to follow proper eviction procedures through the housing court. I can give you information on that process, if you need it. My attorney has already prepared the paperwork. She nodded, professional to the last. Congratulations on your purchase, Mr. Reyes. Congratulations. Like I'd just bought a vacation home, not executed the most calculated act of retribution in my life. I walked out of the clerk's office and nearly collided with Patricia Morrison from the Globe. She had her notebook out, pen poised, that hungry look reporters get when they smell a story. Mr. Reyes, can I get a statement? You just purchased your mother-in-law's home at a tax auction for a fraction of its value. Some people might call that opportunistic. How do you respond to that? I stopped and looked at her, really looked at her. Mid-30s, sharp-eyed, wearing the uniform of someone who'd chosen journalism because they believed in holding power accountable. She deserved a real answer. Ms. Morrison, I've been married to Patricia Cameron's daughter for 12 years. In that time, I've been told repeatedly that I'm not successful enough, not wealthy enough, not good enough for their family. Mrs. Cameron spent a decade making it clear that people like me should know our place, and I did know my place. I was the bank, the ATM that kept their lifestyle running while they looked down on me. So this is revenge. This is accountability. Mrs. Cameron had years to pay her taxes. She chose instead to maintain appearances, to spend money on shopping and lunches and keeping up with people who wouldn't help her now if she was on fire. I'm just the person who finally stopped enabling her delusions. And your wife, how does she feel about this? My soon-to-be ex-wife made her choice. She chose her mother over her marriage. That tells you everything you need to know about where loyalty lies in that family. Patricia Morrison scribbled frantically. One more question. What are you planning to do with the property? Will you evict Mrs. Cameron and her son? Ms. Morrison, what would you do if someone spent 12 years telling you that you were worthless, then expected you to save them from their own mistakes? She didn't answer, but something in her eyes shifted. Understanding, maybe. Or at least acknowledgement that this story was more complicated than rich man kicks poor woman out of her home. I walked away before she could ask anything else. Outside the town hall, the December cold hit my face like a slap. Across the parking lot, I could see Ashley's car still parked. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, not moving, probably trying to process what had just happened, probably trying to figure out how to tell her mother that the house was really, truly gone. My phone buzzed. Jerry Chen. It's done. It's done, I typed back. Media. One reporter. Globe. I gave her a statement. Jesus, David, you're all in now. I was all in the moment I registered for the auction. I got in my car and sat there for a moment. The deed to 847 Monument Street, heavy in my briefcase. Legally, I could drive over there right now, walk up to the front door and tell Patricia and Brandon they had 30 days to vacate. I owned it. Every brick, every window, every painful memory embedded in those walls. But I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. Not when my hands were still shaking from the adrenaline of the auction. Not when I could still see Patricia's face crumpling, hear her begging, watch her perfect world disintegrate. I drove home instead, to my half-empty apartment that Ashley had already begun erasing herself from. Made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, with the deed spread out in front of me. Black ink on white paper. Legal language that translated to, you won. She lost. Nothing can change this now. My phone started ringing. Numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters who'd gotten my information from the auction records. I let them all go to voicemail. Whatever story they wanted to write, they'd write it regardless of what I said. At least Morrison had gotten the context. Maybe that would matter. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone rang with a number I did recognize. Mark Rodriguez, my attorney. David, congratulations. Jerry Chen just sent me the deed. You're officially a property owner in Wellesley Hills. Thanks, Mark. Now comes the hard part. We need to file the eviction notice within the next week to start the 30-day clock. After that, if they don't leave voluntarily, we go to housing court and get a court order. The whole process could take 2 to 3 months if they fight it. They'll fight it. Probably. Which means you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. Patricia will hire lawyers. She'll try to claim improper procedure, emotional distress, elder abuse. She'll throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Let her. David, I need you to understand something. Even though you bought the property legally, the optics of evicting your mother-in-law from her home of 40 years are brutal. Judges are human. They don't like seeing elderly women put out on the street. Patricia Cameron is 65 years old, wealthy friends, family connections, and a son who can support her. She's not some helpless, elderly woman. She's a manipulator who finally ran out of people to manipulate. I know that, you know that, but the judge might not see it that way, so we need to be strategic. Document everything. Every communication, every threat, every time she or Brandon try to interfere with your ownership rights. Build a case that they're hostile occupants, not sympathetic victims. Already started. I have 12 years of documentation of their treatment of me. Good, because you're going to need every piece of it. After I hung up with Mark, I opened my laptop and started organizing files. Every insulting email from Patricia. Every text from Ashley defending her mother's behavior. Every bank statement showing money I'd transferred to help them while they lived beyond their means. It was a digital paper trail of abuse that anyone with eyes could see. But would it matter? Would a judge look at this documentation and see what I saw? Or would they just see a wealthy tech entrepreneur punishing his aging mother-in-law? My doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I considered not answering. But curiosity won out. Brandon Cameron stood on my doorstep, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Unshaven, his expensive clothes wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He'd been crying, or drinking, or both. David, can we talk? Man to man. I almost laughed at the repetition. This was the second time in a week someone from that family had tried the man-to-man approach, like invoking some code of masculine honor would suddenly make me forget 12 years of disrespect. Say what you need to say, Brandon. My mother is in the hospital. Did you know that? She had a panic attack at the auction. They had to give her sedatives. Her blood pressure was so high the doctors were worried about a stroke. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite guilt, not quite concern. Just an acknowledgement that I'd broken something that couldn't be unbroken. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Are you? Because you don't sound sorry. You sound like someone who just got exactly what they wanted. What I wanted was basic human respect. What I got was 12 years of being told I wasn't good enough. So now your mother gets to experience what it's like to lose something you thought was yours forever. Brandon's face twisted. You self-righteous piece of shit. You're not some hero standing up to bullies. You're a petty little man who got his feelings hurt and decided to destroy an old woman's life over it. That old woman called a psychiatrist and tried to have me declared mentally unstable. She spent years spreading lies about my character to anyone who'd listen. She told 50 people I wasn't fit to be a father, so forgive me if I'm not losing sleep over her panic attack. She apologized. At the auction, she apologized. She admitted she was wrong. And you still took her house. Brandon, your mother apologized when she thought it would save her house. That's not remorse. That's negotiation. If I'd backed down, how long do you think it would have taken before she went right back to treating me like garbage? A week? A month? He had no answer for that, because we both knew the truth. Patricia Cameron didn't change. She adapted temporarily when necessary, then reverted to form the moment the pressure was off. What do you want from us? Brandon asked, his voice breaking. Money? We don't have any. An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every shitty thing my mother said to you. Every time I sat there and let it happen. Is that enough? Will you give us the house back now? Brandon, the house isn't mine to give back. I bought it legally. It's done. So, we're just supposed to accept this? Pack up 40 years of memories and leave because you decided to get even? No, you're supposed to accept the consequences of treating people like they're disposable. And you're supposed to learn that actions have reactions, and sometimes those reactions come years later when you least expect them. Brandon stared at me with hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. You know what? Ashley was right about you. You're not the man she married. That guy was kind, forgiving. You're just bitter and cruel. Maybe. Or maybe that guy was just a doormat, and it took 12 years to grow a spine. Either way, I'm done with this conversation. Get off my property, Brandon. Your property, he spat. Everything's property to you now, isn't it? My mother's house, my sister's marriage. Just things to own and control. Says the 42-year-old man who's been living off his mother for his entire adult life. When's the last time you paid rent, Brandon? When's the last time you contributed anything besides criticism and entitlement? His fist came out of nowhere. I should have seen it coming, should have been ready, but I wasn't. His knuckles connected with my jaw, snapping my head back. I stumbled, tasting blood. You son of a bitch, Brandon growled, advancing. You think you can just... I didn't let him finish. 12 years of suppressed anger channeled through one punch that caught him square in the nose. He went down hard, blood streaming from his nostrils. Shock written across his face. Get out, I said quietly, my jaw throbbing. And if you come back here, I'll call the police and add assault to the list of reasons you need to leave my property on Monument Street. Brandon scrambled to his feet, holding his nose, blood dripping between his fingers. He looked at me with something between fear and respect. Maybe for the first time in our relationship, he understood that I wasn't playing. This isn't over, he said, backing toward his car. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. I watched him drive away, then went inside and put ice on my jaw. My hands were shaking again, but this time from the aftermath of violence, not victory. I'd hit him, actually hit him. The me from 2 months ago would have been horrified, but the me standing in my kitchen with a split lip felt nothing but a grim satisfaction. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Brandon just called me. Did you really punch him? He punched me first, I typed back. I just finished it. This is insane, David. You're acting like a crazy person. Your brother came to my home and assaulted me, but somehow I'm the crazy one. That's very on brand for your family. I can't do this anymore. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. Tell him to send them to Mark Rodriguez. He's expecting them. I set down the phone and opened my laptop. Time to draft the eviction notice. Mark would review it, make it official, but I wanted to write the first version myself. Wanted to see the words take shape. Notice to vacate to Patricia Cameron and Brandon Cameron from Riverside Holdings, LLC. Date, December 9th, 2019. You are hereby notified that the property located at 847 Monument Street, Wellesley Hills, MA has been sold to Riverside Holdings, LLC. As the new legal owner, I am requiring you to vacate the premises within 30 days of receipt of this notice. Legal language, cold and precise, but underneath it, the weight of 12 years of accumulated pain, insult, and disrespect. Every word was a nail in the coffin of the Cameron family's illusions of superiority. I saved the document and emailed it to Mark for review. Then I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Because there would be another shoe. The Camerons didn't accept defeat gracefully. The shoe dropped at 7:30 that evening. My doorbell rang, and this time when I answered, I found 2 police officers standing on my doorstep. David Reyes. Yes, sir. We received a complaint about an assault that allegedly occurred at this address earlier today. May we come in and ask you some questions? Brandon. Of course. He'd filed a police report, probably claiming I'd attacked him unprovoked. Smart move, actually. Get a paper trail started. Make me look violent and unstable. Officers, Brandon Cameron came to my home uninvited this afternoon. We had an argument and he punched me in the face. I defended myself. You can see the bruising on my jaw. The younger officer leaned in, examining my face. That's quite a bruise. Did you seek medical attention? No. I iced it and moved on. And you say Mr. Cameron struck you first? He did. I have a Ring doorbell camera that recorded the entire interaction if you need evidence. The older officer perked up. You have video? I do. Would you like to see it? 5 minutes later, both officers were watching my phone screen as Brandon threw the first punch clear as day, followed by my defensive response. The younger cop shook his head. Well, that's pretty clear-cut. Self-defense. Mr. Cameron's report made it sound like you attacked him out of nowhere. Mr. Cameron has a tendency to revise reality to suit his needs. Sir, we're going to need a copy of this video for our records, and I'd recommend you file a cross-complaint for the assault, just to protect yourself legally. I'll do that. After the police left, I sat in the silence of my apartment and felt the full weight of what I'd set in motion. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It wasn't even just about justice. This was a full-scale war, with lawyers and police reports and media coverage. The Camerons were fighting back with everything they had, trying to paint me as the villain, the aggressor, the unstable ex-son-in-law who'd snapped. And maybe I had snapped. Maybe the David who'd married Ashley 12 years ago really was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more willing to fight fire with fire. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. David, it's Dr. Caroline Winters. The psychiatrist Patricia Cameron contacted about you. I'm calling to apologize. I sat up straighter. Apologize. After our last conversation, I did some research, spoke to some colleagues, looked into the family dynamics, and I realized Mrs. Cameron was using me as a weapon in a family dispute. That's not what my profession is for. I wanted you to know that I've documented her misuse of psychiatric services, and I won't be participating in any further attempts to diagnose you remotely. I appreciate that, Dr. Winters. For what it's worth, Mr. Reyes, you don't sound unstable to me. You sound like someone who's been pushed too far for too long. There's a difference. After she hung up, I sat in the dark and let myself feel it. All of it. The anger, the pain, the grim satisfaction of watching people who'd hurt me finally face consequences. The loneliness of winning a war at the cost of everything I'd thought I wanted. My phone buzzed one more time. An email from Jerry Chen with an attachment. Subject line, you need to see this. I opened it. Bank statements, not mine, Patricia's. Somehow Jerry had gotten access to Patricia Cameron's financial records from the past 5 years. And what I saw made my blood run cold. 5 years ago, right around the time Patricia had started really ramping up her criticism of me, she'd taken out a second mortgage on the house, $400,000. The payment was $2,800 per month, the exact amount I'd been sending Ashley every month for their mortgage. I scrolled through the statements, my hands shaking. The money I'd been sending wasn't going to the primary mortgage. It was going to the second mortgage. The one Patricia had taken out and never told anyone about. The one she'd used to maintain her lifestyle, while the primary mortgage and property taxes went unpaid. Ashley had known. She had to have known. She'd been managing the finances, making the transfers, watching the money disappear into her mother's accounts. Which meant for 5 years, my wife had been helping her mother steal from me. Not borrow, not accept help. Steal. I pulled up my calculator and did the math. $2,800 per month for 5 years. $168,000. Money that hadn't gone to keeping them in their home, but to subsidizing Patricia's shopping habits and country club memberships while she literally mortgaged her future. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, I almost admired it. Almost. I forwarded the statements to Mark Rodriguez with a note. Add this to the file. Evidence of fraud. Then I opened a new document and started typing. Not an eviction notice. Something else. A letter to Ashley. Dear Ashley, I know about the second mortgage. I know you've been transferring my money to pay off your mother's secret loan while the real bills went unpaid. I know you've been lying to me for 5 years about where that money was going. I want you to understand something. This isn't about the house anymore. It's not even about your mother's insults. It's about the fact that you, my wife, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, helped your mother steal from me for years. When the divorce is final, I want you to remember this. Remember that you had a husband who loved you enough to tolerate abuse from your family, who worked 2 jobs and built a business so he could support your lifestyle, who bit his tongue through 1,000 insults because he thought family was worth it, and you repaid him by stealing $168,000. Enjoy your mother's company. You deserve each other. David. I saved the letter but didn't send it. Not yet. That revelation needed to wait for the perfect moment, when it would hurt the most. When Ashley thought maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to salvage something from this wreckage. That's when I'd show her exactly what she'd thrown away. My jaw throbbed where Brandon had hit me. My heart ached from the death of my marriage. My conscience whispered that maybe I was going too far, becoming the monster they'd always accused me of being. But I silenced that whisper with a simple question. If not now, when? If not me, who? Someone had to hold the Camerons accountable. Someone had to show them that actions had consequences, that people weren't disposable, that you couldn't steal and lie and manipulate forever without paying a price. And I was done being the person who made excuses for them. The eviction notice would be delivered tomorrow. In 30 days, Patricia and Brandon would be removed from 847 Monument Street. And sometime between now and then, I'd make sure Ashley understood exactly what she'd lost. Not a doormat, not a victim, her only chance at an honest relationship. And she'd traded it for her mother's approval and $168,000 worth of lies. Outside my window, Boston glittered with Christmas lights, families, gathering, celebrating, pretending their dysfunction wasn't showing. And I sat alone in my apartment, the legal owner of a house I'd never wanted, watching my old life burn down around me. But from the ashes, something new was being born. Something harder, colder, unforgiving, something that looked a lot like justice. Mark Rodriguez delivered the eviction notice himself. He'd insisted on it, said having an attorney serve the papers, sent a message about how serious this was. Professional, legal, irreversible. I went with him. We arrived at 847 Monument Street at 9 in the morning on December 10th, one day after the auction. The house looked the same as always, perfect, untouchable. A monument to a lifestyle that no longer existed, but refused to admit it, was dead. Mark knocked on the door. Professional, measured knocks that sounded nothing like Brandon's angry pounding on my door yesterday. We waited. Patricia answered. She looked like she'd aged a decade overnight. No makeup, her hair uncombed, wearing a bathrobe at 9 in the morning. The woman who'd spent 12 years lecturing me about standards and appearances looked like she'd given up on both. Mrs. Cameron, Mark said formally. I'm Mark Rodriguez, attorney for Riverside Holdings, LLC. I'm here to serve you with a notice to vacate the premises. She stared at the papers in his hand like they were a snake. You can't do this. Ma'am, the property was legally purchased at a tax auction yesterday. The new owner has the right to require you to vacate within 30 days. Riverside Holdings, Patricia said slowly, her eyes moving from Mark to me. Who owns Riverside Holdings? I met her gaze. Let her see it in my eyes before I said it. I do, Patricia. Her face crumpled. David. Oh God, David! It was you. You bought my house. I did. But why? Why would you do this to me? To your own family. Because you spent 12 years making it very clear I wasn't family. So I decided to agree with you. Mark held out the papers. Patricia didn't take them, just stood there shaking her head like she could make reality disappear through denial. Finally, Mark set them on the doorstep. Mrs. Cameron, you have 30 days from today to vacate the property. If you fail to do so, we will pursue eviction through housing court. I strongly recommend you consult with an attorney. An attorney? Patricia laughed, but it sounded broken. With what money? You took everything. This house was all I had left. No, I said quietly. This house was all you had left because you spent everything else maintaining an image. The trips, the shopping, the country club membership you couldn't afford. You mortgaged your future for appearances. Her eyes went wide. How do you... I know about the second mortgage, Patricia. The $400,000 loan you took out 5 years ago. The one you used my money to pay off while the real bills went unpaid. She stumbled backward, catching herself on the doorframe. That's private. That's my private financial business. It stopped being private when you used my money to cover your debts. when you had my wife lie to me for 5 years about where that money was going. Ashley didn't. Don't. My voice cut through the December air like a blade. Don't insult both of us by pretending Ashley didn't know. She managed the transfers. She watched $2,800 disappear from our account every month into yours. She knew exactly where it was going. Behind Patricia, Brandon appeared at the top of the stairs. His nose was swollen from yesterday's punch, purple bruises spreading under both eyes. He looked at me with pure hatred. "You need to leave," he said, coming down the stairs. "This is our house. You can't just—" "It's not your house, Brandon. It's mine, and you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. We'll fight this. We'll sue. We'll make your life hell." Mark spoke up. "Mr. Cameron, I should inform you that your assault on Mr. Reyes yesterday has been documented with video evidence and filed with the Wellesley police. Any further harassment will result in a restraining order." Brandon's face went red. "He hit me!" "After you hit him first. That's called self-defense." I stepped closer to the doorway, close enough to see the fear in Patricia's eyes. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack up 40 years of living beyond your means, and you're going to leave. And while you're packing, I want you to think about every insult, every slight, every moment you made me feel like I wasn't good enough, because that's what bought you this outcome. David, please." Patricia's voice broke. I said I was sorry. At the auction, I apologized. You apologized when you thought it would save you. That's not remorse, Patricia. That's strategy. Then what do you want from me? What would actually be enough? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd spent 12 years making me feel worthless, who was now begging me for mercy she'd never shown. Nothing. There's nothing you can give me that I want. You had 12 years to treat me like a human being. You chose not to. Now you get to live with that choice. I turned and walked back to Mark's car. Behind me, I could hear Patricia sobbing, Brandon shouting something that I didn't bother to process. Mark got in beside me and started the engine. "That was brutal," he said as we pulled away. "It needed to be. David, are you sure about this?" "Really sure, because once this story hits the media with the full details about the fraud, there's no going back. Your name will be attached to this forever." I looked back at the house one last time. "I'm sure." The Boston Globe article came out that afternoon. Patricia Morrison had done her homework. The piece wasn't just about a tax auction gone wrong. It was an investigation behind the mansion's facade, how one Wellesley family's deception led to their downfall. By Patricia Morrison. On December 9th, a Georgian colonial mansion in Wellesley Hills sold at a tax auction for $185,100, less than 10% of its $2.3 million assessed value. The buyer was David Reyes, a 38-year-old math teacher and edtech entrepreneur. The former owner was his mother-in-law, Patricia Cameron. But this isn't a simple story about tax delinquency. It's about a family that built their image on borrowed money and borrowed time, and the son-in-law they exploited for years before he finally fought back. The article laid it all out. The second mortgage I'd discovered. The 5 years of payments I'd made thinking I was helping with their primary mortgage, not knowing I was paying off Patricia's secret loan. The birthday party confrontation. The whisper campaign Patricia had conducted about my character and mental health. Morrison had interviewed Dr. Winters, who confirmed Patricia had tried to weaponize psychiatric services against me. She'd found the anonymous email from the party guest who'd witnessed Patricia's post-party character assassination. She'd even tracked down former employees of the Cameron household who spoke about Patricia's lavish spending and refusal to pay bills. The article included my statement, but also gave space to Ashley's perspective. My soon-to-be ex-wife had painted me as vindictive and cruel, a man who'd changed into someone she didn't recognize. But then Morrison included the financial records. The proof of the second mortgage, the timeline showing my payments starting the exact month Patricia's second mortgage had begun. And suddenly, Ashley's portrayal looked less like a concerned wife and more like an accomplice. The comment section exploded within hours. Hundreds of people weighing in, most of them surprisingly on my side. Good for him. Nobody should have to tolerate years of abuse and financial exploitation. The mother-in-law sounds like a nightmare. He showed remarkable patience for as long as he did. Am I the only one shocked that his wife helped her mother steal from him? That's grounds for divorce and possibly fraud charges. This is what happens when people live above their means and look down on the people supporting them. No sympathy for the Camerons. But there were detractors too. He's evicting a 65-year-old woman from her home. That's elder abuse, regardless of the backstory. Two wrongs don't make a right. Yes, the mother-in-law was awful, but this is cruel and excessive. He could have helped them and set boundaries instead. This is just revenge. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Former students reaching out with support. Colleagues from school asking if I needed anything. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years wanting to know if the story was true. And one text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Ashley. We need to talk. Now. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Did you give that reporter our financial records? Her voice was shaking. No, I didn't have to. Public records and some basic investigation did that. Turns out when you commit fraud, the paper trail is easy to find. Fraud? David, I never... Stop. Just stop, Ashley. I know about the second mortgage. I know you've been transferring my money to your mother's loan payments while telling me it was going to the primary mortgage. I have 5 years of bank statements proving it. Silence. Long enough that I thought she might have hung up. Then quietly. How long have you known? 2 weeks. Since before the auction. And you said nothing. You just let me keep lying while you planned this whole thing. I learned from the best. You spent 5 years lying to my face. I figured 2 weeks of strategic silence was fair. David, it wasn't like that. Mom was desperate. She'd made mistakes with the second mortgage, and she was too proud to admit it. I was just trying to help her. By stealing from me. By lying to your husband for 5 years. I was going to tell you. I just needed the right time, when you'd be more understanding. There was never going to be a right time, Ashley, because you knew exactly how I'd react. You knew I'd be furious that your mother took out a massive loan, wasted the money, and then used me to clean up her mess while she kept shopping and looking down on me. She's my mother, David. What was I supposed to do? Let her lose everything? Yes, that's exactly what you should have done. Let her face the consequences of her choices instead of making them my problem. But you didn't. You chose her over me, over our marriage, over basic honesty. I chose my family. I was your family, or I was supposed to be. But apparently, family means something different in your world. It means the people you protect, while throwing everyone else under the bus. I could hear her crying now, those soft sobs that used to make me want to fix everything. But they didn't work anymore. That switch had been flipped permanently off. The divorce papers will be ready next week, I said. I'm citing fraud as grounds. Mark thinks we have a strong case. You're going to claim I defrauded you? In divorce court? David, that will destroy me. I could lose my teaching license. My reputation. Should have thought about that before you helped your mother steal $168,000 from me. It wasn't stealing. You were helping family. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't spend 12 years making someone feel worthless while stealing their money. What you and your mother did. That's not family. That's fraud with a holiday dinner attached. I hate you, she whispered. I hate what you've become. Good, because the man you married was a fool, and I'm done being him. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking again, that now familiar mixture of adrenaline and anger that seemed to define my existence lately. My phone rang again immediately. Different number. I answered without checking. David Reyes. Yes, this is Tom Chen from Channel 5 News. We'd like to interview you about the Cameron situation. Would you be willing to come on camera? No comment, Mr. Reyes. You're at the center of a story that's getting national attention. People want to hear your side. People can read the Globe article. Everything that matters is in there. But don't you want to explain yourself? The optics of evicting your mother-in-law. The optics. How about the optics of a woman who spent 12 years verbally abusing her son-in-law while stealing his money? How about the optics of a wife who helped her mother commit fraud? Those optics don't concern you. That's exactly what I'd like to discuss in an interview. I'm not interested in being your circus act. You want to cover this story? Cover the truth. Talk to the people Patricia owes money to. Talk to the businesses she's written bad checks to. Talk to her former employees about how she treated service workers. Get the whole story, not just the part that makes good TV. I hung up. The media attention was getting worse, not better. By evening, I had 17 voicemails from various news outlets, 3 requests for podcast interviews, and someone from People magazine asking about the human interest angle. This was spinning out of control. Mark called at 7. David, we need to talk about media strategy. This story is everywhere. TMZ just picked it up. TMZ, David, you're going viral. Great, just what I wanted. The problem is the narrative is splitting. Half the internet thinks you're a hero who stood up to abusive in-laws. The other half thinks you're a monster, evicting an elderly woman out of spite. We need to control the message. How? An interview. One interview, carefully controlled, where you lay out the facts, show the financial records, explain the years of abuse, make it clear this isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. That sounds like revenge with better PR. Maybe, but it's also the truth. And right now, the Camerons are winning the sympathy battle because Patricia is playing the victim perfectly. Old woman, facing homelessness, betrayed by her son-in-law. It's compelling, even though it's bullshit. Especially because it's bullshit. People love a good victim story. We need to remind them who the actual victim is here. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to stay silent, let the facts speak for themselves. But Mark was right. Patricia was already reframing the narrative, and she was good at it. She'd spent 40 years crafting her public image. She knew how to play this game. One interview, I said finally, but I choose the outlet, and I want editorial approval over how they present the financial evidence. I can work with that. I'll start reaching out. After Mark hung up, I poured myself a whiskey and opened my laptop. The article had been shared over 50,000 times. Comments were pouring in from all over the country. People I'd never meet, weighing in on my life, my choices, my marriage. Some of the comments made me laugh. Anyone who sides with the mother-in-law has clearly never dealt with a toxic mill. This guy is a saint for putting up with it as long as he did. The wife is the real villain here. She helped her mom steal $168K from her husband. How is anyone defending that? I hope he gets every penny back in the divorce settlement. Others made my blood boil. He's punishing an old woman for having opinions. Grow up and learn to handle criticism. This is financial abuse of an elderly person. He should be arrested. Just because you can do something legally doesn't mean you should. Where's his compassion? But the comment that stopped me cold came from someone named Wellesley Mom 2003. I know the Cameron family. Patricia has been telling everyone for years that her son-in-law is unstable and potentially dangerous. She showed us concerning texts he'd sent, talked about his erratic behavior. But now reading this article, I wonder if those texts were even real, or if she was setting up a narrative in case he ever fought back. That's not just manipulation. That's psychological warfare. I sat back in my chair, letting that sink in. Patricia hadn't just been bad-mouthing me casually. She'd been systematically building a case against me, creating a story where I was the threat, the problem, the one who couldn't be trusted. She'd been laying groundwork for years, insurance against the day I might finally say no, which meant she'd always known this day might come. She'd always known she was exploiting me, and she'd prepared her defense before I'd even realized I needed one. The level of calculation was breathtaking. My phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, from a friend at Wellesley Country Club. Mr. Reyes, you don't know me, but I've been a member of the Wellesley Country Club for 15 years. Patricia Cameron is also a member, though she's several months behind on her dues, which many of us didn't know until recently. After your story came out, several of us started talking, comparing notes. And we realized Patricia has been running this same playbook on all of us for years. She'd borrow money, then spread rumors about the lender to poison the well before they could ask for repayment. She'd buy expensive things on credit, then claim the bills were wrong when she couldn't pay. 3 different members have lent Patricia money over the years. None of us ever got repaid. And all of us experienced her turning cold and distant afterward, followed by whispers about our character spreading through our social circle. We're organizing a meeting next week, as several people want to explore options for holding her accountable. If you're interested in joining us, let me know. We should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry we didn't. I forwarded the email to Mark. This was bigger than I'd thought. Patricia hadn't just been manipulating me. She'd been running cons on her entire social circle, trading on her dead husband's reputation while leaving a trail of unpaid debts and damaged reputations. My phone rang. A Boston area code I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "David? It's Michael. Michael Chen, from college." "Michael, hey, I'm guessing you saw the article." "Everyone's seen the article, man. It's everywhere. Listen, I wanted to call because I have information you need to hear." "What kind of information?" "Patricia Cameron contacted me 2 weeks ago, before the auction. She asked me to make you an offer on the property if you want it. Said she'd pay me a finder's fee if I could convince you to sell it back to her at cost." I went very still. How much was the finder's fee? $50,000, which should have been my first clue she was full of shit, because if she had $50,000 to spend on a finder's fee, she should have used it to pay her taxes. But I didn't know the whole story then. "Did you tell her you'd do it?" "I said I'd think about it. But David, here's the thing. When I asked where she'd get the money to buy the property back, she said she had family resources that could be liquidated. Then she asked me not to mention our conversation to anyone, especially not to you." "Family resources? Like what?" "That's what I wondered. So I did some digging. Turns out Brandon has a trust fund from his father, about $300,000. It was supposed to be untouchable until he turned 45, but there are provisions for hardship withdrawals." My mind raced. So Patricia's plan was to have Brandon drain his trust fund to buy the house back from me, meaning I'd effectively be paying myself back with money that was supposed to be Brandon's inheritance. Exactly. And you'd get the blame for forcing them to liquidate family assets. It's actually kinda brilliant in a deeply fucked up way. "Did you tell her no?" "I told her I'd need to think about it and get back to her. Then I read the Globe article this morning and realized exactly who I was dealing with. So I'm telling you instead, because you deserve to know what she's planning." After Michael hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, processing everything. Patricia wasn't done fighting. She was regrouping, strategizing, looking for angles. The trust fund play wouldn't work now that I knew about it, but there would be other plays, other schemes. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. "David, this is Patricia. I need to speak with you, face to face. No lawyers, no drama, just you and me. There are things you don't understand, things I need to tell you about your wife. Please, one conversation. That's all I ask." I stared at the text for a long moment. Things I didn't understand about Ashley. What could Patricia possibly tell me that would change anything now? But curiosity was a powerful force. And part of me wanted to look Patricia in the eye one more time, wanted to see if there was any remorse there, any acknowledgement of what she'd done. I typed back, "When and where?" Her response came immediately. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the house. Just you and me. Brandon won't be here. Fine. But Mark Rodriguez will be waiting outside. If you try anything, he'll have the police there in 2 minutes. Understood. Thank you, David. Thank you for giving me this chance." I set down my phone and looked out at the Boston skyline, wondering what I'd just agreed to. Was this Patricia's final manipulation? One last attempt to get inside my head and twist reality? Or was there actually something she needed to tell me? Some final revelation that would make all of this make sense? Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'd find out. And maybe, finally, I'd understand exactly who Patricia Cameron really was. Underneath all the lies. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind kept circling Patricia's text, like a vulture over roadkill. Things you don't understand about your wife. What could she possibly tell me that would matter now? What secret could be big enough to justify a face-to-face meeting in the house I'd just taken from her? By morning, I'd convinced myself this was a trap. Some scheme to get me alone, record me saying something she could use in court, paint me as threatening or unstable. I texted Mark at 7 a.m., meeting with Patricia today at 2. Need you nearby. His response came immediately. Bad idea. Whatever she wants to say, she can say through lawyers. I need to hear this. But I won't go in blind. Fine, I'll park down the street. Keep your phone in your pocket with the recording app running. And, David, don't let her get in your head. That's what she does. At 1:30, I pulled up to 847 Monument Street. My house now, though it still felt foreign, like wearing someone else's clothes. Mark's car was parked 3 houses down, visible in my rearview mirror. Insurance. The front door opened before I could knock. Patricia stood there, and I barely recognized her. She'd aged 20 years in 2 days. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual expensive outfits. She looked small, diminished, human. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. Please come in. The house felt different, colder, or maybe that was just knowing I owned it now that Patricia was a guest in her own home. Former home. We walked to the living room, where she'd served me my first dinner 12 years ago, where she'd spent a decade making me feel like an intruder. Can I get you coffee? She asked. No, just tell me what you needed to say. She sat down on the couch and I remained standing. A power play, maybe, but I wasn't ready to get comfortable. She looked at her hands for a long moment before speaking. David, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the desperate version I gave you at the auction. I'm listening. I've been cruel to you. For years. I made you feel inadequate when you were anything but. I criticized your income, your background, your worth as a person. And I did it, knowing exactly what I was doing. Why? She laughed, but it was bitter. Because you reminded me of Robert, my husband, Ashley's father. I sat down then, not expecting that. What are you talking about? Your husband was a successful developer. You've spent 12 years telling me I should be more like him. Robert Cameron wasn't born a successful developer, David. He was born Roberto Campos, son of Mexican immigrants. He changed his name when he started his business, because clients wouldn't hire a contractor named Campos. He built everything from nothing, just like you. The room tilted. I gripped the armrest of the chair to steady myself. You're lying. I wish I was. But it's true. Robert was everything you are. Hard-working, intelligent, came from nothing and built something real. And I destroyed him. What do you mean, destroyed him? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I was 23 when we married. Patricia Whitmore, from a good family, raised with expectations and standards. I thought I was marrying up when I married Robert. He had money, success, a business. What I didn't know was how hard he'd worked for it, or what he'd sacrificed. She stood up and walked to the mantel, picked up a framed photo. Robert Cameron, or Campos, looking younger than I'd ever seen him. And now that I knew, I could see it. The features that I'd been too blind to notice before. The heritage he'd hidden. I spent 30 years making Robert ashamed of where he came from. Patricia continued. I'd make comments about those people around his family. I insisted we celebrate Christmas, but not Las Posadas. I wanted Brandon to play golf, not soccer. Every choice, every subtle pressure was about erasing Roberto and replacing him with Robert Cameron, wealthy developer, member of the country club, acceptable to my family's standards. And he let you. He loved me, or he thought he did. So yes, he let me. He let me turn him into someone he wasn't. And it killed him, David. Not literally. The heart attack did that. But the stress, the constant code switching, the shame I made him feel about his own parents. That killed him. Long before his heart gave out. I stood up, needing distance from this revelation. Why are you telling me this? Because when you married Ashley, I saw it happening again. Another talented man from the wrong background. Another threat to the image I'd spent decades building. And I did to you exactly what I'd done to Robert. I tried to make you ashamed of who you were. You succeeded. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry, David. Because looking at you these past 2 days, seeing you stand up for yourself, refuse to be diminished, That's who Robert should have been. That's the strength I broke in him. I turned to face her. Patricia, even if this is all true, even if you're genuinely sorry, it doesn't change anything. You still stole from me. You still turned my wife against me. You still spent years treating me like garbage. I know, but there's more you need to hear. About Ashley. What about her? Patricia took a deep breath. David, Ashley knew from the beginning. She knew what I was doing to you, and she helped me do it. I already know she helped you with the mortgage fraud. No, I mean she knew about her father, about Robert's real background. She was 15 when he died, and he told her everything before the end. Made her promise to be better than I was, to not be ashamed of her heritage. The floor dropped out from under me. Ashley knew this whole time. She knew, and she made a choice. When she brought you home that first time, I told her the same thing I'm telling you now, that you reminded me of her father. She could have used that to connect with you, to help you understand you weren't alone in this family. Instead, she chose to help me hide it. Why? Why would she do that? Because Ashley is more like me than either of us wanted to admit. She liked the image, the wealthy mother-in-law, the family legacy, the connections. Acknowledging her father's real background meant acknowledging that our family's success was one generation deep, built by a man who had to hide who he was to succeed. I sank back into the chair, my mind reeling. 12 years. 12 years of thinking I was alone in this, that I was the only one who didn't fit. And all along, Ashley could have told me that her father had walked the same path, could have given me that connection, that understanding. Instead, she'd helped her mother erase it. There's more, Patricia said quietly. The second mortgage, the $400,000 I took out 5 years ago. Ashley suggested it. What? She came to me and said we needed to leverage the equity in the house. She had a plan. We'd take out the loan, use it to maintain our lifestyle, while I figured out my finances. And you would help us cover the payments without knowing what you were really paying for. My hands curled into fists. Ashley planned the fraud. She orchestrated it. I went along with it because I was desperate and proud and foolish. But the idea was hers. The execution was hers. And when you started that software business, when she realized you were making real money, she didn't tell you because she was waiting to see how big it would get before she asked you to bail us out completely. I stood up, abruptly, the chair, scraping against the hardwood floor. You're lying. You're making this up to drive a wedge between me and Ashley, to save yourself. David. Patricia walked to a desk in the corner and pulled out a folder. I'm telling you, because you deserve to know the truth, all of it. And because I have proof. She handed me the folder. Inside were emails. Years of emails between Patricia and Ashley, planning the second mortgage, discussing how much money to ask me for, calculating how long they could string me along before I figured it out. One email from Ashley, dated 3 months ago, made my stomach turn. Mom, David's software company is worth at least $5 million now, maybe more. When we divorce, I'll get half. That's our real payday. Just hold out a little longer. I read it 3 times, trying to make the words say something different, but they didn't change. Ashley had been planning to divorce me for months, maybe longer. And not because our marriage was broken, but because I was finally worth enough money to make it worthwhile. When did she decide to divorce me? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. About 6 months ago, she consulted with a divorce attorney, started documenting your emotional distance and changed behavior to build a case for keeping most of the assets. The plan was to wait until your company hit a certain valuation, then file. But I divorced her first. Yes, which is why she's been scrambling. Her lawyer told her yesterday that because you're citing fraud, she might not get anything. She could even face criminal charges if you press hard enough. I sat back down, the folder heavy in my lap. Why are you telling me this? Why betray your own daughter? Patricia's face crumpled. Because I created her, David. Every manipulative instinct, every calculated move, every lie, I taught her all of it. And watching her turn into me, watching her destroy a good man the same way I destroyed her father, I can't live with it anymore. This doesn't absolve you. I know. Nothing absolves me. But maybe it stops the cycle. Maybe if you know the truth, you won't make the mistake Robert made. You won't let a Cameron woman destroy you. I stood up, tucking the folder under my arm. I need to leave. David, wait. One more thing. What? The house. I know you own it legally, but I'm asking, begging, for 60 days instead of 30. I need time to find a place, to move 40 years of belongings. I'll pay rent. Whatever you think is fair. I looked at Patricia Cameron, this woman who'd spent 12 years making my life miserable, who was now offering to pay rent to live in her own home. The victory should have felt sweeter. Instead, I just felt tired. I'll think about it, I said. But Patricia, if you're lying to me, if any of this is another manipulation, I won't just evict you. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Every lie, every scheme, every person you've ever conned. I'll burn your reputation so thoroughly that no one in this city will ever trust you again. I understand. And one more thing. That trust fund Brandon has, the $300,000. If you try to use it to buy this house back through a straw buyer, I'll know. And I'll make sure Brandon understands exactly how you were planning to sacrifice his inheritance for your pride. Patricia's face went white. How did you? I have friends too, Patricia. People who actually care about me, not just what I can do for them. Remember that. I left the house without looking back, my mind spinning with everything I'd learned. Mark's car pulled up beside me as I reached the street. Well, he asked through the window. Drive. We need to talk. We went to a coffee shop in Newton, somewhere neutral where I could think. I laid out everything Patricia had told me, showed him the emails from Ashley. Mark read them slowly, his expression darkening with each line. Jesus Christ, he muttered. David, this changes everything about the divorce. How? Ashley was planning to defraud you. Premeditated, documented fraud. With these emails, we can not only protect your assets, we can go after her for attempted theft. She could lose her teaching license. She could face criminal charges. I don't want to destroy her. David, she wanted to destroy you. She was just waiting for you to be worth enough money to make it worthwhile. I stared at my coffee, watching steam curl toward the ceiling. Is it crazy that part of me still doesn't want to believe it? That the woman I married for 12 years was capable of this? Not crazy, human. But David, you need to accept reality here. Ashley isn't who you thought she was. Maybe she never was. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a photo. Brandon Cameron, drunk in a bar, surrounded by his friends. The text caption read, "Your fault, all of this. Watch your back." I showed it to Mark. He grimaced. We need to file for a restraining order. Brandon's escalating. Let him escalate. I'm done being afraid of the Camerons. David. No, Mark. Listen, for 12 years I lived in fear of these people. Fear that Patricia would reject me harder, that Ashley would be disappointed, that I wasn't good enough for their world. I'm done with that. If Brandon wants to threaten me, let him. We'll add it to the evidence pile. Mark studied me for a long moment. You've changed. 2 months ago, you would have tried to de-escalate. Now you're ready to go to war. 2 months ago, I didn't know my wife was planning to rob me. Things change. That evening, the story took another turn. Someone, I suspected Patricia Morrison, though she wouldn't confirm, leaked Ashley's emails to a Reddit thread that had been following the story. Within hours, the narrative shifted completely. Holy shit, the wife is worse than the mother-in-law. She planned to divorce him just to take his money. This is next-level sociopathic. She helped her mom steal from him for 5 years, then planned to divorce him and take half his company. This man needs to sue everyone. I take back everything sympathetic I said about the wife. She's a con artist, pure and simple. Plot twist. The whole family are villains except the husband, who's been getting abused for over a decade. The comment section exploded with over 10,000 responses, but it wasn't just internet strangers anymore. Real consequences were starting to materialize. At 10 p.m., I got a call from Ashley's principal, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who I'd met at a few school functions over the years. David, I'm calling to let you know that Ashley has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Investigation into what? The school board received copies of emails suggesting she may have engaged in financial fraud against you. Given that she teaches financial literacy to high school students, the optics are problematic. I wanted you to hear it from me before it becomes public knowledge. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment processing. Ashley's career was imploding. Patricia was broke and facing eviction. Brandon was drinking himself into threats. The entire Cameron family structure was collapsing like a house built on sand, and I'd been the earthquake that finally brought it down. My phone rang again. This time, Ashley. "David, please, you have to make this stop." "I can't make anything stop, Ashley. This is just consequences. They're suspending me because of those emails. Emails that were private. How did they even get out? The same way everything else got out, because lies don't stay buried forever. This is your fault. You're destroying my life." "No, Ashley. You destroyed your life when you decided to steal from me for 5 years. I'm just finally refusing to be your safety net. I could lose everything. My job, my reputation, my teaching license. Don't you care about that?" I thought about the question carefully. Did I care? A month ago, I would have said yes. Would have moved heaven and earth to protect her, even from herself. But now, Ashley, here's what I care about. I care that you knew your father was Mexican, knew he'd faced the same discrimination I faced, and you never told me. You let me feel alone and inadequate when you could have given me that connection, that understanding. She was silent. I care that you planned the mortgage fraud. Not your mother. You. You came up with the scheme to steal from me, then executed it for 5 years while pretending to be my wife. David, I care that you were planning to divorce me the moment my company was worth enough money, that you were documenting evidence of my bad behavior while actively setting me up to be robbed. And I care that when I finally stood up for myself, you called me crazy, unstable, cruel. I was trying to protect my family. I was your family, or I was supposed to be. But you never saw it that way, did you? I was always the outsider, the wallet with inconvenient feelings attached. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me one time, one single time in 12 years, when you chose me over your mother, when you defended me, when you made me feel like I mattered more than her approval. Silence. Long and damning. That's what I thought, I said quietly. So no, Ashley, I don't care that you're losing your job. I don't care that your reputation is destroyed, because you earned every bit of it. And, unlike you, I'm not going to pretend to care just to manipulate you. I hung up before she could respond. Blocked her number. Blocked Patricia's number. Blocked Brandon's number. Cut the Camerons out of my life as completely as they'd tried to cut me out of theirs, except I was doing it with legal documentation instead of lies. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I was happy. Happiness seemed like a distant concept. But because for the first time in 12 years, I didn't have to wonder if I was good enough. Didn't have to perform for people who would never appreciate it. Didn't have to pretend that abuse was love, that manipulation was family. I was free. Broke emotionally, divorced, facing media scrutiny and public judgment. But free. And freedom, it turned out, was worth more than any house in Wellesley Hills. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Something had happened overnight, something big. I opened my phone to find a text from Mark. Turn on the news. Channel 5. Now. I flipped on the TV to see Brandon Cameron's mugshot filling the screen. Lem. The banner read, "Local man arrested for vandalism, public intoxication." The news anchor's voice filled my apartment. Brandon Cameron, 42, was arrested early this morning after allegedly spray-painting threats on a property in Dorchester. Police say Cameron specifically targeted the home of his former brother-in-law, David Reyes, writing, "You'll pay," and other threatening messages on the garage door. Cameron was reportedly intoxicated at the time of his arrest and has been charged with vandalism, criminal threats, and public intoxication. I stared at the screen, not quite believing it. Brandon had actually driven to my apartment at 3 in the morning and vandalized my property while drunk. The cameras had to have caught everything. My phone rang. "Mark, David, please tell me your apartment complex has security cameras." "It does." "Perfect. We're filing a restraining order today. And we're adding this to the evidence pile for why Patricia and Brandon need to vacate immediately. A pattern of harassment and threats. Mark, this is getting out of control. It's been out of control. This is just the first time it's become criminal. Let them self-destruct, David. You just keep your hands clean and let the Camerons do what they do best. Make terrible decisions. Later that morning, Patricia called from a number I hadn't blocked yet. A neighbor's phone, probably. David, I'm so sorry. He's not well. The stress of everything has... Please don't let this affect our agreement about the 60 days. Patricia, your son vandalized my property and threatened me. Why would that make me more sympathetic to your housing situation? Because it wasn't me. I had nothing to do with it. I was asleep. I didn't even know he'd left the house until the police called. But that's the thing, Patricia. You raised him. You enabled him his whole life. You taught him that he could do whatever he wanted without consequences because Mommy would always clean up his messes. And now he's 42 years old, vandalizing his brother-in-law's apartment like a drunk teenager because he never learned that actions have consequences. David, please, I'll think about the 60 days. But Patricia, control your son. Because next time, I'm pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law. And I will make sure every newspaper in Boston knows that the Cameron family's fall from grace included drunk vandalism and criminal threats. I hung up and looked around my apartment. My garage door was covered in spray paint. Brandon was in jail. Ashley was suspended from her job. Patricia was on the verge of homelessness. And somehow I was the villain in their story. But I didn't feel like a villain. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped letting bullies define his worth. Someone who'd learned that standing up for yourself sometimes meant watching other people's worlds burn. The Camerons had spent 12 years treating me like kindling. They just hadn't expected me to finally light the match. Brandon's arraignment was scheduled for December 18th, 9 days after the auction. Mark insisted I attend, said it would show the judge I was serious about the threats, that this wasn't just a family squabble but actual criminal behavior. The Norfolk County Courthouse was everything you'd expect. Marble floors, fluorescent lights, the smell of stale coffee, and desperation. I sat in the gallery with Mark, watching other cases get processed before Brandon's turn came up. When they brought him out, he looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Orange jumpsuit, unshaven, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He glanced around the courtroom until he found me, and the hatred in his eyes was so pure, it was almost physical. The prosecutor, a tired-looking woman named Janet Martinez, laid out the charges. Your Honor, Mr. Cameron is charged with vandalism, criminal threats, and public intoxication. On the morning of December 12th at approximately 2:47 a.m., he was apprehended by Dorchester police after spray painting threatening messages on the property of Mr. David Reyes, including "You'll pay" and "This isn't over." Security camera footage shows Mr. Cameron was visibly intoxicated and became combative with arresting officers. The judge, a black woman in her 50s named Judge Kathleen Morrison, looked over her reading glasses at Brandon. Mr. Cameron, do you have representation? A public defender stood up. Young guy, probably fresh out of law school, already looking defeated. I'm representing Mr. Cameron, Your Honor. My client is going through an extremely difficult time. His family is facing eviction, his sister's marriage has ended, and he's been under tremendous stress. Counselor, Judge Morrison interrupted. Stress doesn't excuse vandalism or criminal threats. Does your client have any priors? No, Your Honor. This is his first offense. Mr. Reyes is here, I see. Does he wish to make a statement? Mark stood. Your Honor, Mark Rodriguez representing Mr. Reyes. My client has been subjected to months of harassment from the Cameron family. Mr. Brandon Cameron physically assaulted my client on December 9th. We have video evidence of that incident. This vandalism is part of a pattern of escalating threats. We're requesting a restraining order prohibiting Mr. Brandon Cameron from coming within 500 feet of Mr. Reyes or his property. Judge Morrison looked at me. Mr. Reyes, would you like to address the court? I stood up, feeling 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Your Honor, I don't want to destroy Brandon Cameron, but I need him to understand. that threatening me and vandalizing my property isn't acceptable. I need to feel safe in my own home. Understood, Mr.
Cameron, I'm releasing you on $5,000 bail with the condition that you have no contact with Mr. Reyes. A preliminary restraining order is in effect immediately pending a full hearing. If you violate this order, you'll be back in jail.
Do you understand? Brandon nodded sullenly, not meeting anyone's eyes. You'll also be required to undergo substance abuse evaluation. Your preliminary hearing is scheduled for January 8th. Don't make me regret letting you out, Mr. Cameron. As we left the courthouse, I saw Patricia waiting in the hallway. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd been physically compressed by the weight of everything falling apart. Our eyes met, and she opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. What was there to say? Mark touched my elbow. Don't engage. Let her deal with her son's mess. But as we walked past, I heard her say quietly, "Thank you for not pushing for him to stay in jail." I stopped, turned back. "Patricia, I didn't do it for you. I did it because I'm not you. I don't kick people when they're down just because I can." Her eyes filled with tears, but I walked away before she could respond. The next day, the community reaction became impossible to ignore. I'd been checking my mailbox, expecting hate mail, threats, angry letters from Patricia's friends. Instead, I found something else, entirely. 3 letters from women I didn't know, all of them members of the Wellesley Country Club, all of them sharing nearly identical stories. The first letter was from a woman named Carol Henderson. "Dear Mr. Reyes, you don't know me, but I want you to know you're not alone. Patricia Cameron borrowed $15,000 from me 3 years ago for what she called unexpected medical expenses. She never repaid a cent. When I finally asked about it, she told her friends I was harassing her about a gift I'd freely given. By the time I realized what happened, my reputation in our social circle was already damaged. I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner, but I'm speaking up now." The second was from Margaret Chen. "Mr. Reyes, Patricia Cameron has been running variations of this scam for years. She borrowed $8,000 from me for emergency home repairs. Never saw it again. When I pressed, she claimed I was being crass about money and told everyone I was having financial problems. The projection was masterful. She was broke, but made everyone think I was the desperate one." The third letter was the one that stopped me cold, from a woman named Elizabeth Morrison. No relation to the reporter or the judge, apparently. "David, if I may call you that, my husband and I lent Patricia $50,000 5 years ago when she claimed she was facing foreclosure. She said her late husband's estate was tied up in probate, and she just needed to bridge the gap. We believed her. We gave her the money interest-free with a handshake agreement. 6 months later, we saw her at the country club, having clearly just come from an expensive vacation. When we gently asked about repayment, she acted shocked that we expected the money back, called it a gift between friends. She's been cold to us ever since, and has told anyone who would listen that we're nouveau riche, who don't understand how real friendship works. Reading your story in the Globe, everything made sense. Patricia has been doing this to everyone, using her dead husband's reputation and her carefully maintained image to extract money from people, then turning on them when they ask for accountability. We're organizing. 10 families so far who've been burned by Patricia Cameron. We're consulting with an attorney about options. Would you be willing to meet with us? I read the letter 3 times, then texted Mark a photo of it. His response was immediate. "Holy shit. This is bigger than we thought. Call me." We met at his office that afternoon. Mark had already been contacted by the same group. "David, Patricia hasn't just been running a scam on you. She's been running it on half of Wellesley Hills. We are talking about potentially $200,000 in unpaid loans from various people. If we can organize these victims, we can establish a pattern of fraud that goes beyond just your case. What would that mean for Patricia? Criminal charges, serious ones, wire fraud, obtaining money under false pretenses. She could be looking at actual prison time." I sat back in my chair, processing. I don't want her in prison, Mark. Why not? She's been systematically defrauding people for years. Because she's 65 years old, and I'm not interested in being the person who sends her to die in jail. I want accountability, not cruelty. David, she wasn't worried about cruelty when she was stealing from you. I know. But I'm not her. That's the whole point. Mark studied me for a long moment. You know what? You're a better person than most people would be in your position, including me. That evening, I met with the group of Patricia's victims at a law office in Wellesley. 10 people, ranging from their 40s to their 70s, all well-dressed, educated, exactly the kind of people Patricia had spent her life trying to impress. Elizabeth Morrison led the meeting. Thank you for coming, David.
We've been comparing notes, and the pattern is clear. Patricia identifies someone with money, cultivates a friendship, creates a fake emergency, borrows money, then never repays it. When confronted, she weaponizes social connections to paint the lender as the bad guy. How much total? I asked. Best estimate, about $230,000 across all of us.
Some people probably haven't come forward yet out of embarrassment. A man named Thomas Chen spoke up. The question is what we want to do about it. We could press criminal charges as a group. The prosecutor would likely take it seriously with this many victims. Or, Elizabeth said, we could pursue civil remedies. Force her to declare bankruptcy, liquidate whatever assets she has, try to recover something. Or, I said quietly, we could offer her a deal. Everyone turned to look at me. What kind of deal? Thomas asked. She's facing eviction from my house in 3 weeks. She has nowhere to go and no money to get there. She's desperate. What if we offered her a choice? She can either face criminal prosecution from all of us, which means probable prison time at her age, or she can sign a formal confession, acknowledge the fraud in writing, agree to never borrow money from anyone in Wellesley again, and accept bankruptcy proceedings to distribute whatever assets she has. Elizabeth frowned. That's awfully generous considering what she's done. Maybe, but it also ensures she faces real consequences, without any of us becoming the person who sent an old woman to prison. And the confession gives all of you documentation for insurance purposes, tax write-offs, whatever you need. The group debated for an hour. Some wanted blood, wanted to see Patricia prosecuted to the fullest extent, but others, particularly the older members, seemed tired of fighting, tired of anger, tired of letting Patricia Cameron take up space in their lives. Finally, Elizabeth spoke. I think David's right.
A confession and bankruptcy gives us closure without making us the villains. We get acknowledgement of the fraud, we get what money we can recover, and we move on with our lives. The vote was 7-3 in favor of the deal.
We drafted the terms that night. Patricia would sign a notarized confession, detailing every loan she'd received under false pretenses. She'd declare bankruptcy and agree to a court-supervised distribution of any remaining assets. And she'd leave Wellesley entirely. No living in the area, no attending country club functions, no inserting herself back into the social circle she'd exploited. Mark would present the offer to Patricia's attorney tomorrow. She'd have 48 hours to accept. I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not victory, not satisfaction, but a sense that maybe, possibly, there was a way through this that didn't leave everyone destroyed. Patricia accepted the deal the next morning. According to Mark, she'd cried when her attorney explained the terms, but she'd signed everything without argument. The alternative, criminal prosecution from 12 victims, was too scary to contemplate. The confession was brutal to read. 3 single-spaced pages detailing every lie, every fake emergency, every person she'd manipulated. She'd borrowed money claiming medical bills that didn't exist, home repairs that were never done, investment opportunities that were pure fiction. And every time, she'd used her carefully maintained image as a grieving widow, a pillar of the community, someone who'd fallen on hard times through no fault of her own.
The document ended with a statement I hadn't expected. I, Patricia Cameron, acknowledge that I have spent the past 15 years systematically defrauding members of my community. I exploited their kindness and trust for my own benefit.
I showed no remorse until I was caught. I destroyed my own daughter's marriage by teaching her to value money and status over integrity. And I nearly destroyed a good man, David Reyes, whose only crime was loving my daughter and trying to be part of our family. I cannot undo the harm I've caused. I can only acknowledge it fully and accept the consequences. To everyone I've hurt, I'm sorry, and I know sorry isn't enough. I read those words 3 times, trying to find the manipulation in them, the angle she was playing, but they seemed genuine. Or maybe I just wanted them to be. The eviction date was set for January 15th. Patricia had used the 60 days I'd given her to find an apartment in Worcester, about 40 miles away. Small, affordable, nothing like the mansion she was leaving behind. Brandon was moving with her. He didn't have much choice given his legal situation and complete lack of income. I didn't plan to be there for the move. Didn't want to watch them pack up 40 years of life into boxes and U-Haul trucks. That felt like twisting the knife, and I'd made my point. But 3 days before they were set to leave, Patricia called. "David, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but could you come by the house? There's something I need to give you. Patricia, please, it's important, and then you'll never have to see me again." Against my better judgment, I drove to Monument Street one last time. The house was already half empty. Boxes everywhere, walls bare where paintings had hung for decades. Patricia met me at the door wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair tied back, looking more like a normal person than I'd ever seen her. "Thank you for coming," she said. "This way." She led me to what had been Robert's study. Most of it was packed, but one box remained open on the desk. She reached in and pulled out a leather-bound journal. This was Robert's. His real journal, not the public one where he documented business deals. He wrote in this every night for 30 years. She handed it to me. I opened to a random page dated June 1995. Patricia made another comment today about my mother's accent. Said, "It was charming but inappropriate for business functions." I didn't correct her. I should have, but I've spent so long building Roberto Campos into Robert Cameron that I don't know how to defend the person I used to be without admitting I've been pretending for 15 years. Sometimes I wonder what my father would think of me now. Would he be proud or ashamed that his son became successful by erasing everything he taught me about heritage and pride? I flipped forward. October 2001. Met Ashley's new boyfriend today. David something. Teacher. Mexican family, from his accent and the way he shifts between languages when he thinks no one's listening. Patricia made a comment about people from that background, and I saw him flinch, saw him try to make himself smaller. I should say something, should tell him I understand. But then I'd have to admit that Robert Cameron is a fiction, and I've spent 30 years building this fiction into something I can't tear down. I closed the journal, my throat tight. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you deserve to know you weren't alone, that Robert saw you, understood you, and was too much of a coward to say so. And because," she took a shaky breath, "because maybe if you read about what happened to him, what I did to him, you'll understand why I tried to do the same thing to you, not as an excuse, as an explanation. Patricia, I destroyed the man I loved by making him ashamed of who he was, and then I watched myself about to do it again to you. But you were stronger than Robert. You fought back, and even though it cost you everything, you didn't let me break you." She pulled out one more thing from the box. A photo. Robert Cameron, Roberto Campos, as a young man, standing next to an older couple. His parents, presumably. All three of them smiling, pride evident in every line of the photo. This was taken the day Robert opened his first business. Before he changed his name. Before I convinced him that Roberto wasn't good enough for the life we wanted. She pressed the photo into my hand along with the journal. "Keep these. Learn from his mistakes. And please, David."
When you eventually meet someone new, someone you can build a real life with, don't let her make you into someone you're not.
Don't sacrifice yourself for someone else's comfort. I looked at Patricia Cameron, this woman who'd caused me so much pain, and saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine regret. Not the strategic apologizing of someone trying to save themselves, but real, bone-deep remorse. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for everything. You deserved better. From me, from Ashley, from all of us." "Yeah," I said. "I did." She nodded, accepting it. "The house is yours in 3 days. I've left it clean. I fixed the loose floorboard in the upstairs bathroom, replaced the broken fence posts in the back, had the carpets cleaned. It's the least I could do. You didn't have to do that." "I did, actually. You bought this house legally, but it's still my husband's legacy, our legacy, and I couldn't leave it for you in anything less than perfect condition. Robert would have wanted that. She walked me to the door. At the threshold, she stopped. "David, one last thing. Ashley doesn't know about the journal, about her father's real story. I never told her the full truth. That's my failure. But if you ever decide to tell her, to give her that piece of her father she never knew, I won't stop you. She needs to understand what we lost, what I threw away. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask." I left the house carrying Robert's journal and photo, feeling the weight of a story that was bigger than my own grudges. The drive home was quiet, introspective. I thought about Robert, spending 30 years pretending to be someone else, dying without ever reclaiming his identity. I thought about how close I'd come to the same fate. And I thought about Patricia, who'd gotten exactly what she'd worked for. A perfect image, a respected place in society, the appearance of success, only to discover it was all hollow, that the things she'd sacrificed to maintain that image were the only things that actually mattered. That night, I sat in my apartment and read Robert's journal cover to cover. 30 years of a man slowly losing himself, page by page, decision by decision. It was heartbreaking, and it was familiar, because for 12 years I'd been walking the same path, making myself smaller, quieter, more acceptable, apologizing for things that weren't my fault, pretending that abuse was love because the alternative was admitting I'd chosen wrong. Robert never escaped. He died still trapped in the prison he and Patricia had built together, but I'd gotten out. Bruised, broke, divorced, and carrying more trauma than I'd started with, but out. And that made all the difference. January 15th arrived cold and gray, the kind of New England winter day that made you question why anyone lived this far north. I'd arranged to meet Mark at the house at noon, after Patricia and Brandon would have finished moving out. I didn't want to watch them leave. Some victories didn't need to be witnessed to count. I pulled up to 847 Monument Street at exactly 12:07. The moving trucks were gone. The driveway was empty. Just the house standing there, waiting. My house now. The thought still felt foreign, like wearing someone else's skin. Mark was already there, leaning against his car. "You ready for this?" "I don't know what I'm ready for." "Well, you own it either way. Let's see what you got." Patricia had left a key under the mat with a note. "The alarm code is 10:15, Robert's birthday." I couldn't bring myself to change it. "The house is yours now. Treat it better than I did. P." I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house echoed with emptiness. All the furniture was gone, the walls bare where paintings had hung, rectangles of darker paint marking where frames had protected the surface for decades. My footsteps on the hardwood floors sounded too loud, like an intruder in a space not meant for me. "She really did clean it," Mark said, walking through the living room. "Not a speck of dust. The floors are polished. Even the windows are spotless." We walked through the house room by room, the kitchen where I'd eaten so many uncomfortable dinners, the dining room where Patricia had told 50 people I wasn't fit to be a father, the study where Robert Cameron had spent 30 years writing about his slow erasure. Every room was empty and clean, waiting to be filled with someone else's life. Upstairs, the bedrooms were just as bare. Patricia's master bedroom, where she'd probably planned strategies to extract more money from people. Brandon's room, still bearing the marks of a 42-year-old man who'd never left home. Holes in the wall from posters, scratches on the floor from moving furniture, the faint smell of stale beer that no amount of cleaning could completely remove. And Ashley's childhood bedroom, the smallest of the 4 bedrooms with windows overlooking the backyard. I stood in the doorway, trying to imagine a young Ashley growing up here, learning from Patricia how to manipulate and scheme, watching her father slowly disappear into the person her mother wanted him to be. "What are you going to do with it?" Mark asked, standing beside me. "The house? I don't know. Sell it, probably. I never wanted to live here. You could make a fortune. Property in this neighborhood, you could probably get $2.5 million, maybe more. Blood money. It's just money, David, and you earned every penny through 12 years of abuse. Don't moralize yourself out of financial security." We finished the walkthrough in the basement, empty wine racks where Patricia had stored bottles she couldn't afford, a home gym that had never been used, storage rooms full of nothing but dust, and
Memories.
As we were leaving, I noticed something on the kitchen counter, an envelope with my name on it in Ashley's handwriting. My stomach clenched. "I'll wait in the car," Mark said diplomatically. I opened the envelope alone in the empty kitchen. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, front and back. "David, I'm writing this because Mom said you might come by after we moved out, and I couldn't leave without saying things I should have said months ago. Years ago, maybe. I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster who married you for money and spent 12 years lying to your face. And you're right about all of it. But that's not the whole story, and I think you deserve to know the whole truth before we're done forever. I did love you. When we got married, when we stood in front of everyone and promised forever, I meant it. You were everything my father had been before my mother broke him. Kind, hardworking, genuine. I saw it. I felt it. And part of me loved you for being everything she'd destroyed in him. But I was already my mother's daughter. She'd been training me my whole life to value the wrong things. Status, appearance, money. By the time I was old enough to understand what she'd done to my father, to understand that Robert Cameron was really Roberto Campos, and that he'd died ashamed of who he was, I was already too much like her to change. When you and I started dating, Mom pulled me aside and told me about Dad's real background, about how he'd hidden his heritage to build his business.
And she made me promise never to tell you, never to give you that connection, because men like that need to earn their place, not be handed it through sympathy. I should have told you anyway. Should have said, my father walked the same path and here's what he learned. But I didn't, because some part of me already agreed with her. Some part of me thought you needed to prove yourself worthy of us. The mortgage fraud was my idea.
You were right about that. Mom was drowning in the second mortgage, and I saw an opportunity. You were making money from your software business that you weren't telling me about. Yes, I knew about that earlier than you thought. I figured if you were hiding money, I could hide where your help was really going. It started as temporary, just until Mom got back on her feet. But temporary became months, became years, and somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling guilty about it. You seemed fine. We seemed fine. And I convinced myself that you'd never know, so what was the harm?
Then your company started really taking off, and I made a decision that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I started planning the divorce.
Not because I stopped loving you, but because I'd spent so long being my mother's daughter that I couldn't imagine any other way. Take the money. Secure the future. Feelings are secondary. When you bought the house at the auction, when I realized you'd known about everything and had been planning your own moves while I planned mine, I felt something I'd never felt before. Respect. Real respect.
Not the kind Mom taught me to perform, but genuine admiration for someone who'd finally stopped letting us break him. You stood up. You fought back. You refused to be erased like my father was. And in doing that, you showed me exactly what I'd lost.
Not a doormat, not a wallet, but a man who would have loved me forever if I'd just been honest with him. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness.
But I wanted you to know that losing you, really losing you, taught me something my mother couldn't. That character matters more than status. That honesty matters more than money.
That being loved by a good person is worth more than any house in Wellesley Hills. I'm leaving Massachusetts, taking a teaching job in Oregon where nobody knows my name or my family's story, starting over, trying to become someone my father would have been proud of, if he'd ever had the chance to be himself. I hope you find someone who deserves you, someone who sees your worth without needing to tear you down first, someone who chooses you every time, the way I should have. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm sorry anyway. Ashley. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, justified, proven right about everything, but mostly I just felt tired and sad for everyone involved in this mess. Ashley had been a victim too, in her way, raised by Patricia, taught the wrong lessons, shaped into someone who valued all the wrong things. That didn't excuse what she'd done, didn't make the fraud or the planned divorce or the lies any more acceptable, but it explained them. And maybe, in some small way, it offered a kind of closure. Ashley understood what she'd lost. She was trying to change. Whether she'd succeed or fail wasn't my problem anymore. I walked out of the house, locked the door, and handed Mark the envelope. Read it if you want. I'm done with the Camerons. What are you going to do with the house? I looked back at 847 Monument Street. This monument to everything wrong with prioritizing image over substance. This place where Robert Cameron had lost himself and Patricia had destroyed everyone around her. I'm going to live in it, I said, surprising myself. At least for a while, I'm going to fill it with new memories, new furniture, new life, and I'm going to prove that this house isn't cursed. It was just owned by the wrong people. Mark smiled.
You know what? That's actually perfect. Nothing says I won't quite like living in your enemy's castle. Over the next month, I turned 847 Monument Street into something that felt like mine. I hired an interior designer, not the expensive kind Patricia would have used, but a young woman fresh out of school who had fresh ideas and didn't care about impressing anyone. We painted the walls in colors I actually liked, blues and grays instead of Patricia's beiges and creams. I bought furniture that was comfortable instead of expensive, art that made me smile instead of art that impressed guests. I converted Robert's study into my office, hung his photo of Roberto Campos and his parents on the wall as a reminder of what happened when you let others define you. The guest bedroom became a proper guest room, decorated for the family and friends who'd actually supported me. My sister Rosa came out from Arizona for a week, brought her kids, filled the house with noise and laughter, and the smell of real Mexican cooking, the kind Patricia had considered too ethnic for her dinner parties. "Mijo, this place is beautiful," Rosa said, looking around the kitchen where I'd installed normal appliances instead of Patricia's restaurant-grade showpieces. "You've made it yours. It's just a house. No, it's proof that you won, not just the legal battle, but the real one. You refuse to be broken." My nephew Miguel, 15 years old and mouthy in that way teenagers are, wandered in from the living room. "Uncle David, is it true you bought this from your evil mother-in-law?" "Miguel," Rosa swatted him. "Don't be rude." "It's okay," I said, laughing. "Yeah, kid. I bought it from my evil ex-mother-in-law after she spent 12 years treating me like garbage." "That's so badass." "You're like a movie villain, but in a good way." "A movie villain? You know, like the guy everyone thinks is the bad guy, but he's actually just getting revenge on people who deserve it." Rosa shook her head. "Don't encourage him, David. He already thinks life is a telenovela." But Miguel had a point. In the Cameron family's version of this story, I was the villain, the cruel son-in-law who'd taken an old woman's house and destroyed a family. But in my version, I was just someone who'd finally stopped accepting unacceptable treatment. Both stories were true. Neither told the whole truth. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I got an unexpected visitor. I was working in my office when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a silver SUV I didn't recognize parked in the driveway. I opened the door to find a woman about my age, pretty, professional-looking, holding a manila folder. "David Reyes?" "Yes, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm an attorney representing Ashley Reyes. Sorry, Ashley Cameron, your ex-wife." My guard went up immediately. I thought the divorce was finalized. It was. This isn't about the divorce. "May I come in?" I led her to the living room. Offered coffee, she declined and waited. Jennifer opened her folder and pulled out a document. "My client wanted you to have this. It's a letter from her father, Robert Cameron." She found it among his papers after her mother moved out. It was addressed to you, though obviously he died before he could give it to you. She handed me an envelope, yellowed with age, with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting.
"To David Reyes, should he ever become part of our family." I opened it carefully. The letter inside was dated August 2007, 6 months before Robert died. "David, if you're reading this, it means you married my daughter, and it means I'm gone. Both of those things make me happy and sad in equal measure. I'm happy because you seem like a good man, hardworking, genuine, the kind of person I would have wanted Ashley to be with, someone who hasn't sacrificed his identity for acceptance. I'm sad because I know what's coming. Patricia will make your life hell. She'll criticize everything about you that doesn't fit her image of success. She'll make you feel small, inadequate, unworthy. She did it to me for 30 years, and I let her because I loved her, and I thought love meant changing yourself to fit someone else's vision. I was wrong. My name wasn't always Robert Cameron. It was Roberto Campos. I changed it because I thought I had to.
Because clients wouldn't hire a Mexican contractor. Because Patricia's family wouldn't accept a Mexican son-in-law. Because I was convinced that being myself meant being less than. I built a successful business, made money, gave my family a good life, and I lost myself completely in the process. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late to go back. I'd been Robert Cameron for so long that Roberto Campos felt like a stranger. Don't make my mistake, David. Don't let my wife convince you that you need to be someone else to deserve a place in this family. Don't let her daughter inherit her mother's worst qualities without fighting back. Stand up, be yourself, and if that means this family rejects you, walk away. Because a family that only loves you when you're pretending to be someone else doesn't love you at all. I wish I'd had the courage to walk away. I hope you do. Buena suerte, hermano. You're going to need it. Roberto Campos. Robert Cameron. I read the letter 3 times, my eyes burning with tears I didn't want to cry in front of a stranger. Robert had known, had seen what was coming, had tried to warn me from beyond the grave. And I'd never gotten the message, because he died before we met. Ashley wanted you to have this, Jennifer said quietly. She said you'd understand what it meant. Why didn't she give it to me herself? She's in Oregon, teaching at a middle school in Portland. She said seeing you again would be too hard, that you'd earned the right to never have to look at her again. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in the envelope. Thank you for bringing this. There's one more thing. Jennifer pulled out another document. Ashley is signing over her rights to any claim on your software business. She's also declining to pursue any form of alimony or asset division from the marriage. She wanted you to know that she's not her mother, that she's trying to do the right thing, even if it's too late to matter. I stared at the document. Ashley was giving up potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, asking for nothing in return. Why? Jennifer smiled sadly. She said, because I took enough from him. I won't take anything more. After Jennifer left, I sat in the empty living room of Robert's house, my house, holding his letter and thinking about the strange circle of events that had led here. Robert warning me from the grave. Ashley finally learning the lessons her father had tried to teach. Patricia losing everything she'd sacrificed her integrity to maintain. And me, sitting in the middle of it all, not quite victorious, not quite vindicated, just changed. The doorbell rang again. This time when I opened it, I found a delivery driver holding a massive bouquet of flowers. Delivery for David Reyes. I took the arrangement, confused. The card read, "Thank you for letting me see who I really was. I hope someday you can forgive me." I set the flowers on the kitchen counter and stood looking at them for a long time. Forgiveness. That was a complicated word. Did I forgive Ashley? Did I forgive Patricia? Did I forgive myself for letting it go on as long as I did? Maybe. Eventually. But not today. Today I was just going to live in this house that was finally mine, fill it with my own life, and let the Cameron family fade into memory where they belonged. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerry Chen, my accountant. "David, I have news about your software company. Call me when you can." I called immediately. "Jerry, what's up? I've been fielding inquiries about buying your company. There's a firm out of Seattle that's very interested. They're talking $8.5 million. I sat down hard on my couch. $8.5 million. That's their opening offer. I think we could negotiate up to $10 million if we play it right. David, you could sell, take the money, and retire at 38. Never work another day in your life if you don't want to. I looked around the house that had cost me $185,470. And a marriage, the house that was now worth $2.3 million, but had actually cost me 12 years of self-respect. The house I'd bought with revenge, but was now trying to turn into something resembling peace. "Set up the meeting," I said. "Let's hear what they have to say." "David, you're going to be rich. Actually rich." Everything the Camerons pretended to be. You're going to be for real. "Jerry, I've been rich this whole time. I just didn't know it until I stopped letting other people tell me I was poor." After we hung up, I walked out onto the back deck overlooking the yard Patricia had kept so perfect. The February evening was cold, the sun setting early, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere across town, Patricia was living in a small apartment, working as a clerk at a department store, her reputation destroyed and her social circle gone.
Brandon was in court-ordered therapy, trying to deal with his drinking and his rage. And Ashley was in Oregon, teaching middle school kids and trying to become someone her father would have been proud of. All of us scattered by the explosion I'd triggered when I finally said no. I pulled out my phone and did something I probably shouldn't have. I unblocked Ashley's number and sent her a text. I got the letter from your father and the legal documents. Thank you. Her response came 5 minutes later. You're welcome. I hope you're happy, David. You deserve it. I'm getting there. You? Working on it. Teaching helps. The kids don't know who I used to be. I get to start over. That's good. A long pause. Then, the house. Is it strange, living there? Not anymore. I've made it mine. Your father's photo is on the wall in my office. The real one, with his parents. Roberto Campos, not Robert Cameron. I'm glad. He would have liked that. Ashley, one question. If you could go back, would you do it differently? The reply took longer this time. When it came, it was simple and devastating. Every single thing, from the first day. I would have chosen you over my mother every time, but I can't go back. So I just try to be better now. That's all any of us can do. David, thank you for not destroying me completely. You could have pressed criminal charges, made sure I never taught again. You didn't. I'm not your mother, Ashley. I don't get off on destroying people. I know. That's what I lost. I put the phone down and watched the sun finish setting over Wellesley Hills. In the distance, I could see lights coming on in other houses, other families starting their evening routines. Normal people living normal lives without the drama that had consumed the past 4 months. I wanted that. Normal. Peace. A life where I didn't have to fight for basic respect or defend my worth to people who should have loved me unconditionally. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I thought maybe I could have it. The house wasn't a prison anymore. It was just a building. 4 walls, a roof, empty rooms waiting to be filled with new stories. I could sell it and move away, start fresh somewhere. Nobody knew about the Cameron family drama. Or I could stay, prove that this house didn't define me any more than Patricia's judgment had. Either way, I was free. And freedom, I was learning, was worth more than any amount of money, any house, any relationship, built on lies and manipulation. The February evening turned to night, and I sat on my deck watching the stars come out, holding Robert's letter, thinking about fathers and daughters and the legacies we leave behind. Roberto Campos had tried to warn me. Ashley had tried to change too late. Patricia had finally learned what happens when you sacrifice everything real for something fake. And me. I was just trying to figure out how to be David Reyes again. Not the doormat who'd tolerated abuse. Not the vengeful ex-husband who'd taken his mother-in-law's house. Just David, whoever that was underneath all the damage. I was about to find out. 6 months later, August 2020, I stood in the kitchen of 847 Monument Street, making breakfast for someone who wasn't me. Her name was Carmen Ortiz. She was a civil rights attorney. 40 years old, divorced with no kids, and she'd walked into my life 3 months ago, when her firm had represented one of the families in the class action against Patricia. We'd met during a mediation session, bonded over coffee afterward, and discovered we had more in common than just being victims of the Cameron family schemes. Is that actual chorizo I smell? Carmen called from upstairs. Or are you trying to impress me with fancy turkey sausage? Actual chorizo. From the Mexican market in Framingham. The good stuff. She appeared in the doorway wearing one of my t-shirts and nothing else, her dark hair still messy from sleep. You're dangerous, David Reyes. You keep cooking like this. I'm never leaving. That's the plan. We ate breakfast on the deck overlooking the backyard I'd converted from Patricia's formal garden into something more comfortable. Fruit trees instead of ornamental bushes. A vegetable garden instead of perfectly manicured lawn. A fire pit where Patricia's fountain had been. So today's the big day, Carmen said, sipping her coffee. Company sale closes at 2 p.m. Yeah. You nervous? Should I be? You're about to have $9.8 million in your bank account. That's life-changing money, David. I looked around at the house that had cost me everything and nothing. Money's never been the point. I know. But it doesn't hurt. She was right. After months of negotiations, The Seattle firm had agreed to buy my software company for $9.8 million. After taxes and Jerry's commission, I'd clear about $6.5 million. More money than Robert Cameron, Roberto Campos, had probably made in his entire life. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. After 6 months, I still half expected threats from Brandon or manipulative messages from Patricia. But it was neither. David, this is Dr. Sarah Chen, Ashley's former principal. I wanted to let you know that the school board completed their investigation. Ashley won't be facing charges. They determined she made poor personal choices but didn't misuse school resources. Thought you'd want to know. SC. I showed Carmen the text. She read it and raised an eyebrow. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Relief. Ashley made mistakes, but she didn't deserve to lose her career over them. That's very mature of you. Or very tired. I can't tell anymore. After breakfast, Carmen left for work. She had a deposition in downtown Boston. I was officially unemployed, had been since selling my stake in the software business last month. The new owners had offered to keep me on as a consultant, but I'd declined. 38 years old and retired. It felt surreal. I spent the morning in my office, Robert's old study, organizing paperwork for the company sale closing. On the wall, Roberto Campos smiled at me from that old photo, surrounded by his parents, before he'd become Robert Cameron, before he'd lost himself. I didn't make your mistake, I told the photo quietly. I got out before it was too late. My phone rang. Mark Rodriguez. David, we have a situation. What kind of situation? Patricia Cameron is at my office. She wants to talk to you. I went very still. Why? She wouldn't say. But David, she looks rough, really rough. I think whatever she wants to say is important to her. I hadn't seen Patricia in 6 months. Not since she'd moved out. We'd communicated only through lawyers about the bankruptcy proceedings, the distribution of assets to her victims, the formal closure of everything that had happened. Tell her I'll be there in 30 minutes. Mark's office was in Wellesley Center, ironically just a few blocks from where Patricia had once held court at the country club she could no longer afford. I found her in his waiting room, and Mark hadn't been exaggerating. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 6 months. Her hair was completely gray now, no expensive dye jobs to maintain the illusion of youth. She wore simple clothes from Target or Marshall's, nothing designer. Her hands were rough, probably from whatever job she'd taken. This was Patricia Cameron, stripped of every artifice, every pretense. Just a 65-year-old woman who'd run out of games to play. David, she said, standing up when she saw me. Thank you for coming. Mark said you wanted to talk. Can we go somewhere? Just the two of us. I'll buy you coffee. I almost laughed at that. Patricia Cameron offering to buy me a $3 coffee. But I nodded, and we walked to a Starbucks 2 blocks away, the kind of chain restaurant Patricia used to consider beneath her. She ordered plain drip coffee, no fancy drinks. I got the same. We sat outside even though it was warm, because the silence felt less oppressive in open air. I'm not here to ask for anything, Patricia started. I know you don't owe me anything. I just needed to tell you something, and I didn't want to do it through lawyers. I'm listening. I'm leaving Massachusetts, moving to Arizona. Rosa, your sister, actually helped me find a job out there. That stopped me. Rosa, my sister Rosa. She called me 3 months ago, said she'd heard through someone at her church that I was struggling to find work because of my reputation. She offered to help. Why would she do that? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because she said, my brother taught me that revenge and cruelty are 2 different things. I won't let an old woman starve just because she made mistakes. She got me an interview at a community center where she volunteers. I'll be doing administrative work. Minimum wage, but it's honest work. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Rosa hadn't mentioned any of this, hadn't told me she'd been helping Patricia. I wanted you to know before I left, Patricia continued. And I wanted to say one more thing. I was wrong about you, about everything. You were never the problem. I was. And I'm sorry I wasted 12 years making you believe otherwise. Patricia, let me finish. Please. She took a shaky breath. Robert wrote you a letter before he died. Did Ashley give it to you? She did. Good, because he tried to warn you about me, about what I'd done to him, and he was right. I destroyed the best man I ever knew by making him ashamed of who he was. And then, I almost did the same thing to you. Almost, but you didn't. Because you were stronger than Robert. Or maybe because the world had changed enough that you didn't have to choose between being yourself and being successful. Either way, you survived what I tried to do to you, and I'm grateful for that. Grateful, yes, because you proved something I needed to see, that the whole system I'd built, the status, the image, the pretending, was worthless. It took losing everything for me to understand that the only thing that matters is being honest, with yourself, with others, with who you really are. A young couple walked past holding hands, laughing about something private. They looked happy, uncomplicated, free of the kind of damage Patricia and I carried. What about Brandon? I asked. Patricia's face darkened. Brandon is Brandon. He's still in Massachusetts, still angry at the world. He refuses to get help, refuses to accept responsibility. I've stopped trying to save him. That must be hard. It's necessary. I enabled him his whole life, and look what it created. A 42-year-old man who thinks the world owes him something. I can't fix him, David. I can barely fix myself. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Patricia pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? A check.
For $5,000. It's all I've saved from 6 months of working. I owe you $168,000, and it'll take me the rest of my life to pay it back. But this is a start. I'm sending you $500 every month going forward.
It's not much, but it's what I can do. I looked at the check. Patricia Cameron, written in her neat handwriting. $5,000. Probably everything she had to her name. Patricia, I don't need this money. I know, but I need to give it. Please, let me do this one thing right. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. Okay, but on one condition. What? You stop sending it once you've repaid what you borrowed from the other families. They need it more than I do. And Patricia, when you're done making amends to everyone else, when you've paid back every dollar you can, then we'll talk about you and me. That could take years. Then it takes years. I'm not going anywhere. She cried then quietly, the kind of tears that come from genuine relief, rather than manipulation. I didn't comfort her. Didn't reach across the table or offer false reassurances, but I didn't leave either. Just sat there while she processed, whatever she needed to process. Thank you, she finally said, for not destroying me completely when you had every right to. I didn't do it for you, Patricia. I did it because I didn't want to become you. She smiled sadly. Wise choice. As I walked back to my car, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. That was still too complicated, but maybe the beginning of letting go. Patricia was trying, actually trying, not performing contrition to get something, and that mattered. My phone buzzed. Carmen, how did it go? Tell you tonight. Dinner at 7, you cooking? Always. Then definitely yes. The company sale closed at 2:15 p.m. in a conference room downtown. Lawyers, bankers, executives from the Seattle firm, all of them shuffling papers and signing documents. Jerry Chen sat beside me, grinning like he'd won the lottery himself. Congratulations, David, the lead attorney said, shaking my hand. You're officially a very wealthy man. I looked at the number on the wire transfer confirmation. $9,147,500. More money than I could have imagined when I was making $45,000 a year as a teacher, getting insulted at Sunday dinners, thinking I wasn't good enough. Thank you, I said. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Figuring out what to do with it. Jerry drove me home. My home. The house that had started all of this. On the way, he brought up the question I'd been avoiding. So are you keeping it? The house? I don't know. Part of me wants to sell it, take the money and never look back. Fresh start somewhere else. And the other part? The other part thinks I've finally made it mine. That walking away now would be letting the Camerons win in a different way. That's deep, David. Maybe too deep for a Tuesday afternoon. I laughed. Yeah, probably. When we pulled up to the house, I saw a car I didn't recognize, parked in the driveway. Someone waiting for me. My guard went up immediately. 6 months hadn't completely erased the paranoia. But when the car door opened, it was Ashley. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, styled simply. She wore jeans and a basic sweater, no expensive labels visible. And her face was makeup-free, showing the lines around her eyes that she used to carefully conceal. "David," she said nervously, "I know I shouldn't have come, but I'm flying back to Oregon tomorrow, and I needed to see you one more time." Jerry glanced at me. "You want me to stay? It's okay. I'll be fine." After Jerry left, Ashley and I stood in the driveway of the house where she'd grown up, the house I'd taken from her mother, the house that now belonged to me. "I heard about the company sale," she said. "Congratulations. News travels fast. In our old social circle. Yeah, everyone's talking about it. About how the guy Patricia Cameron looked down on just became richer than she ever was. Is that why you're here? To celebrate my success?" "No, I'm here to tell you I'm getting married." The words hit harder than I expected. Even after everything, even knowing we were done, hearing that Ashley was moving on, felt like a door closing that I hadn't quite finished walking through. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. "His name is Tom. He teaches biology at my school. He's kind, patient, and he knows everything about what I did to you. I told him all of it before we got serious. I wanted him to know who I used to be, so he could decide if he wanted to be with who I'm trying to become. And he still proposed. He said everyone deserves a second chance to be better. That the person I am now isn't the person I was then." I looked at Ashley, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen during our marriage. Peace. Real peace. Not the performed contentment she used to display. She'd actually changed. "I'm happy for you, Ashley. I really am. Thank you. That means more than you know." She paused, gathering courage. "David, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Do you ever think about what we could have been? If I'd made different choices? If I'd been honest from the beginning?" I thought about it carefully. "Sometimes. But honestly, I don't think we ever could have worked. Not because of you or me, but because of your mother. She'd already poisoned the well before we even met. The relationship was doomed the moment you chose to hide your father's real story instead of sharing it with me. I know. I chose wrong from day one." She looked up at the house. "Do you hate living here? With all the memories?" "I did at first, but I've made it mine, filled it with new memories. A friend of mine says the best revenge is living well in your enemy's castle, and I think she's right." Ashley smiled. "She sounds smart. Is she more than a friend?" "Getting there." "Good. You deserve someone who chooses you first, who doesn't make you fight for basic respect." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. A man with kind eyes and a genuine smile, standing next to Ashley at what looked like a hiking trail. "This is Tom. I chose him because he reminds me of who you were before my family broke you. Kind, honest, real. Don't compare him to me, Ashley. Let him be his own person." "You're right. That was unfair." She put her phone away. "I should go. I just wanted to see you one more time. Tell you I'm moving on, and ask if you could maybe, someday, not hate me completely." I looked at this woman I'd spent 12 years with, who'd helped destroy me and was now trying to rebuild herself. And I felt something unexpected. Not love, that was long dead. Not even friendship, but a kind of distant compassion. She was trying. That had to count for something. "Ashley, I don't hate you. I hate what you did, but you're not what you did. You're what you're trying to become. Keep working on that, and maybe someday we can be people who run into each other and don't feel the need to run away." She hugged me then quickly, before I could decide if I wanted her to. "Thank you, David, for everything, for showing me what I'd become, for not destroying me when you could have, for being better than my family ever was." I watched her drive away, back to her new life in Oregon, her new husband-to-be, her fresh start. And I felt the last piece of anger I'd been carrying finally loosen its grip. That evening, I cooked dinner for Carmen. Real Mexican food, the kind Patricia would have called too ethnic. Tamales, rice, beans, and fresh tortillas. Carmen's eyes lit up when she walked in and smelled the kitchen. "Okay, this is officially better than my grandmother's cooking." And I'm Mexican. You're going to make me fat. That's the second time you've threatened to never leave. Maybe I mean it this time. Over dinner, I told her about Patricia's visit, about Ashley's engagement, about the strange sensation of watching the people who'd hurt me most move on with their lives. How do you feel about all of it? Carmen asked. Lighter, like I've been carrying all their baggage for 6 months, and they finally came and picked it up. Are you going to keep the house? I think so, at least for a while. I've put too much work into making it mine to give up now, even with all the bad memories, especially with all the bad memories. Every time I walk through this house and don't feel worthless, every time I cook food Patricia would have looked down on, every time I live my life on my own terms in the space she tried to control, I'm winning, and I like winning. Carmen laughed. You know what? You've earned it. Keep the castle. Fill it with good people and good memories. Make Patricia Cameron's biggest fear come true. What's that? That you're happier without her approval than she ever was with it. After dinner, we sat on the deck watching the sun set. Carmen's head on my shoulder, my arm around her waist. Comfortable, easy, nothing like the constant tension of my marriage to Ashley. Can I tell you something? Carmen said. Anything. 3 months ago, when I met you, I thought you were going to be a project. Some damaged guy who'd need years of therapy before he could have a healthy relationship. Gee, thanks. But you're not. You're actually dealing with it. Processing, growing. It's rare. I had good motivation. I looked at what Patricia and Ashley became by never dealing with their damage, and I decided I didn't want that life. Smart man. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Carmen said, My lease is up next month. My landlord's raising the rent. That sucks. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe I could move in here. With you, if you're ready for that. I looked at her. This woman who'd walked into my life at exactly the right moment. Not as a savior or distraction, but as a partner. Someone who saw what I'd been through and didn't try to fix me, just walked beside me while I fixed myself. I'm ready, I said. On one condition. What's that? You help me burn the last box of Patricia's things I found in the attic. Symbolically close the door on all of it. Carmen grinned. Deal. When do we burn? Right now. We built a fire in the fire pit I'd installed where Patricia's fountain used to be. I brought out the box, old papers, photos of Patricia and her country club friends, receipts from expensive purchases she couldn't afford, the physical evidence of a life built on pretense. Any last words before we commit arson? Carmen asked. I looked at the box, then at the house, then at Carmen. Yeah, thank you, Patricia Cameron, for being terrible enough that I finally learned to stand up for myself. This is the last time you'll have any power in my life. I dropped a match into the box. We watched it burn, smoke curling up into the August sky, carrying away the last physical remnants of a family that had tried so hard to break me. As the fire died down, Carmen squeezed my hand. How do you feel? Free. Good, because tomorrow we're going furniture shopping. If I'm moving in, we're getting rid of that terrible couch you bought. What's wrong with my couch? Everything. It's ugly, uncomfortable, and it looks like you bought it from a college student moving out. I did buy it from a college student moving out. My point exactly. We laughed, and the sound echoed across the yard that used to belong to Patricia Cameron, but now belonged to me. My house, my life, my choice about who got to be part of it. Later that night, lying in bed with Carmen asleep beside me, I got up and walked through the empty rooms of 847 Monument Street. 6 months ago, this place had felt haunted, full of ghosts and bad memories. Patricia's judgment in every corner, Robert's sad resignation in every wall. But now, it just felt like a house. 4 walls and a roof, empty space waiting to be filled with whatever I chose to put there. I made my decision then. I'd keep it. Not forever, maybe, but long enough to prove to myself that the Camerons didn't define me, long enough to fill these rooms with love and laughter and the smell of good food, long enough to show that you could take something broken and make it whole. I walked back to the bedroom where Carmen was sleeping and stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. Somewhere in Oregon, Ashley was planning a wedding. In Arizona, Patricia was working minimum wage and trying to make amends. In Massachusetts, Brandon was probably drinking in some bar, angry at a world that had finally stopped enabling him. And I was here. In the house, I'd won through the worst experience of my life, with a woman who actually chose me first, with money I'd earned honestly, with a future that was finally, actually mine. The Camerons had tried to break me. Instead, they'd forged me into someone stronger, someone who knew his worth, someone who wouldn't settle for being treated like less than he was. I climbed back into bed, and Carmen stirred, reaching for me in her sleep. "You okay?" she mumbled. "Yeah," I said, pulling her close. "I'm perfect." And for the first time in 12 years, I actually meant it. 1 year later, December 2021. I stood in the driveway of 847 Monument Street watching the moving trucks pull away for the last time. After 18 months of ownership, I'd finally decided to sell. Not because I was running from the memories, I'd conquered those, but because Carmen and I had found a place that was ours, not mine or Patricia's or anyone else's ghosts. The house had sold for $2.7 million. A young couple with 2 kids, both doctors, people who'd worked hard and earned their success. Honestly, when they'd toured the property, the wife had walked through the kitchen and said, "I can see our family being happy here," and I'd known they were the right buyers. Carmen walked out of the house, carrying the last box, Robert's journal and photos, the ones I was keeping. She set it in the trunk of our car and came to stand beside me. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Not one. Even after everything it cost you to get it." I thought about that question. 12 years of marriage, gone. A family I'd tried to belong to, destroyed. Months of public scrutiny and media attention. The exhaustion of fighting people who should have loved me. "No," I said finally, because the cost wasn't getting the house. The cost was staying in that marriage for as long as I did. Buying the house was just the receipt for lessons I'd already paid for. Carmen kissed my cheek. Philosopher and cook. I really hit the jackpot. We drove away from Wellesley Hills for the last time, heading to our new home in Cambridge. A 3-bedroom townhouse near MIT, close to Carmen's office, with a yard big enough for the garden I wanted, and the dog Carmen had been lobbying for. A place with no history, no ghosts, just blank pages waiting for our story. My phone buzzed as we merged onto the highway. A text from Mark Rodriguez. "Congratulations on the sale. That's officially the most profitable revenge in Massachusetts legal history." I smiled and typed back. It was never about profit, but I'll take it anyway. The truth was more complicated than Mark's joke. Yes, I'd made money, bought a house for $185,370, sold it for $2.7 million 2 years later. Add in the $9.8 million from my company's sale, subtract what I'd lost to the mortgage fraud, and I'd still cleared over $12 million. Money I never would have made if Patricia hadn't pushed me to my breaking point. But the real profit wasn't financial. It was knowing my worth, understanding that no relationship was worth sacrificing my dignity for. Learning that family wasn't defined by blood or marriage, but by who actually showed up when things got hard. "Have you heard from Patricia lately?" Carmen asked, navigating Boston traffic. "Last week, she sent her monthly check, $500 like clockwork for the past year. She's up to $11,000 repaid out of the $168,000 she stole. That'll take her 30 years at this rate." "I know." I told her after she hits $25,000, I'm forgiving the rest. She's 70-something years old. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life collecting a debt from someone who's already paid in every other way. Carmen glanced at me. "That's generous. It's practical." Patricia's living in a studio apartment in Phoenix, working retail, sending me half her paycheck every month. She's learned the lesson. Making her suffer for another 30 years doesn't teach anyone anything. What about the other families she defrauded? She's paying them back too. $200 a month split among the 10 of them. They'll all be made whole eventually. The point was never to destroy her. It was to hold her accountable. We pulled up to our new townhouse, and I felt a wave of contentment wash over me. This was home, not because of the square footage or the neighborhood or the property value, but because it was ours. Built on honesty, not lies. Chosen freely, not out of desperation or obligation. Inside, I started unpacking boxes while Carmen made coffee. My phone rang, a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Ashley. I almost didn't answer. We'd established boundaries after her last visit. Friendly but distant. Occasional texts but no phone calls. But something made me pick up. David, I hope it's okay that I'm calling. It's fine. What's up? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Ashley. Pregnant. Starting a family with someone who wasn't me. It should have hurt. Maybe a year ago it would have. But now it just felt like information. A fact about someone else's life. Congratulations, I said, and meant it. That's wonderful news. Thank you. Tom and I are really excited. But David, I called because... She took a breath. I'm naming him Robert, after my father. And I wanted you to know before anyone else told you. My throat tightened. Roberto or Robert? Roberto. His full name will be Roberto Thomas Chen. I want my son to know his grandfather's real name, his real story. I don't want to make my mother's mistakes. Ashley, that's perfect. Your father would be proud. I hope so. I'm trying, David, every day, to be the person Dad wanted me to be, before Mom convinced me to be someone else. I can tell. You sound happy. I am. Finally. And David, thank you for not letting me get away with what I did, for forcing me to face who I'd become. I know it wasn't your job to fix me, but you did it anyway by refusing to enable me. You fixed yourself, Ashley. I just stopped standing in your way. After we hung up, I stood in my new kitchen holding my phone, thinking about the strange paths people take to become who they're supposed to be. Ashley had needed to lose everything to find herself. Patricia had needed to be exposed and humbled. Brandon probably still needed things he hadn't figured out yet. And me, I'd needed to be pushed so far that I finally pushed back. Carmen appeared with 2 mugs of coffee. Ashley, she's pregnant, naming the baby Roberto, after her father's real name. That's big. Yeah, it is. How do you feel about it? I thought about the question carefully, like watching someone else's movie. Interested, hoping it ends well but not personally invested in the outcome. Is that cold? That's healthy. You're not her husband anymore. You're not responsible for her happiness or her growth. You're just a person who knew her once and wishes her well from a distance. When did you get so wise? I'm a lawyer, David. Wisdom is literally my job. That evening, we had dinner with Rosa and her family. My sister had become a regular presence in our lives since moving to Boston 6 months ago. Her husband had gotten a job at a hospital in Brookline, and suddenly my support system had expanded from Mark and Jerry to include actual family. So the house sold? Rosa asked, passing tamales across the table. Closed this morning. Young couple, 2 kids. They're going to be happy there. Good. That place had bad juju. Miguel, now 16 and even more opinionated than before, spoke up. Uncle David, my friends at school think you're a legend. There's like a Reddit thread about you with 50,000 upvotes. Please tell me you're joking. Dead serious. They call you the man who bought his revenge. Someone even made a TikTok about it that got 2 million views. Carmen laughed. You're internet famous and you didn't even know it. I'd rather not be. Too late, Miguel said, pulling out his phone. Look, someone made an animated version of the story. It's actually pretty accurate, except they made you look more like a superhero. I watched 30 seconds of a cartoon version of myself confronting a caricature of Patricia at an auction before I had to look away. That's enough internet for today. People love a good revenge story, Rosa said, especially when the person getting revenge was genuinely wronged. It wasn't revenge, I protested. It was accountability, boundaries, justice, whatever you want to call it. But David, normal people don't buy their mother-in-law's house out from under her. That's revenge. Own it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been so busy telling myself I was taking the high road that I'd missed the obvious truth. I'd wanted Patricia to hurt. Wanted her to feel the powerlessness and humiliation she'd inflicted on me for 12 years. And when the opportunity came to make that happen legally, I'd taken it. Was that wrong? Was it revenge? Or was it just the natural consequence of treating people like garbage for long enough that they stopped accepting it? I think, Carmen said quietly, that revenge and justice aren't as different as we pretend. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the thing that feels good. And that's okay. Deep thoughts from my lawyer girlfriend. Fiancé, Carmen corrected, holding up her left hand where a ring now sparkled. Rosa screamed. Miguel's eyes went wide, and I realized Carmen had just announced our engagement to my family before we'd properly discussed it ourselves. "When did this happen?" Rosa demanded. "About 4 hours ago," Carmen said, grinning. "David proposed while we were unpacking boxes. Very romantic, surrounded by bubble wrap and furniture. I said I'd do it properly later," I protested, "with dinner and candles and the whole thing. And I said yes anyway because I'm not marrying you for your event planning skills." The dinner dissolved into celebration. Rosa crying happy tears, Miguel giving me relationship advice I definitely didn't need from a 16-year-old, Carmen's ring being examined and admired, and I sat there feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Real belonging. Not the conditional acceptance I'd gotten from the Camerons. This was family. Messy, loud, imperfect, but mine. Later that night, Carmen and I sat on the couch in our new living room, exhausted but happy. The boxes were mostly unpacked, the furniture arranged, the house starting to feel like home. "Can I ask you something serious?" Carmen said. "Always. Do you forgive them? Patricia, Ashley, all of it?" I thought about the question for a long time.
Forgiveness was complicated. It wasn't a switch you flipped or a decision you made once. It was a process, something you worked toward. And sometimes you got there, and sometimes you didn't. "I forgive Ashley," I said finally. She was 23 when we got married, still figuring out who she was, with a mother who'd spent her entire life teaching her the wrong lessons. She made terrible choices, but she's genuinely trying to be better. So, yeah, I forgive her. And Patricia's harder. She was an adult the entire time. She made conscious choices to manipulate and steal and destroy. But she's also spent the past year trying to make amends. Actually trying, not performing. So I'm working toward forgiveness. Not there yet, but working toward it. And Brandon, I laughed bitterly. Brandon can go to hell. Some people don't want to change. They just want the world to rearrange itself around their comfort. He's still blaming everyone else for his problems, still drinking, still angry. I don't forgive him, and I probably never will. Fair enough. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Carmen said, "You know what I think the real lesson of all this is?" "What?" "That you can't make people value you. You can only decide what you're willing to accept. Patricia couldn't make you feel worthless unless you agreed to feel worthless. And the moment you stopped agreeing, her power disappeared. So buying her house was just me withdrawing my agreement. Exactly. You weren't destroying her. You were reclaiming yourself." I pulled Carmen closer, kissed the top of her head. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" Patricia Cameron introduced us technically. If she hadn't defrauded all those people, I never would have been at that mediation. So really you should send her a thank you card. Let's not get crazy. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number with an Arizona area code. I opened it. "David, this is Patricia. I heard you sold the house today. I wanted you to know that I'm happy for you. Not for the money, though I'm sure that's nice, but because you turned a place full of bad memories into something that gave you closure. You did what Robert never could. You reclaimed your identity without destroying yourself in the process. Thank you for showing me that was possible. And congratulations on your engagement. Carmen is lucky to have you." I showed Carmen the text. She read it and smiled. "See? Even Patricia knows you're a catch. She's right about one thing. Robert never got to reclaim himself. He died still pretending to be someone else. But you didn't, and that's what matters." I looked around our new home, at the furniture we'd chosen together, at the walls waiting for photos of our life, not someone else's, at the future stretching out ahead of us, full of possibilities that didn't involve Sunday dinners with people who hated me or marriages built on lies. "Do you know what the weird thing is?" I said. "I'm grateful for all of it, for Patricia's cruelty, for Ashley's betrayal, for every insult and manipulation and stolen dollar.
because it forced me to become someone who wouldn't tolerate that treatment anymore. That's called post-traumatic growth. It's a real thing. Well, whatever it's called, I'll take it. I'd rather be who I am now with everything I went through to get here than still be that guy who was making $50,000 a year and eating shit from people who weren't worth my time. Carmen raised her coffee mug. To the man who bought his revenge and found himself instead. I clinked my mug against hers. To moving on. To new beginnings. We drank to that, and the coffee tasted like freedom. 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail from an inmate at MCI Framingham, a women's prison west of Boston. The return address made my stomach drop. I opened it carefully. David, you don't know me, but my name is Catherine Morrison. I'm serving 5 years for wire fraud and theft. I ran a scam very similar to what Patricia Cameron did. Borrowed money from wealthy friends claiming emergencies, never paid it back. I read about your story in prison. Someone had printed out the Reddit thread, and it was being passed around. Most women here thought you were either a hero or a villain, depending on their own situations. But I wanted to write and tell you something nobody else will. What you did saved Patricia Cameron's life. I know that sounds crazy, but I've been where Patricia was, drowning in debt, desperate to maintain an image, lying to everyone, including myself. And when I got caught, when the courts came after me, I tried to kill myself, twice, because I couldn't face the humiliation of everyone knowing what I really was. Patricia didn't get that option. You forced her to face it, but you also gave her a path forward. The bankruptcy, the payment plan, the chance to make amends. You held her accountable without destroying her completely. I'm in here because the people I stole from wanted blood. They pressed charges, demanded maximum sentences, made sure I lost everything, and they were right to do it. I deserved punishment, but they didn't give me any path back. No redemption, no second chances. Just punishment. So I wanted to say thank you. Not for me, but for Patricia. Because you showed that accountability and mercy aren't opposites. That you can hold someone responsible for their actions while still recognizing their humanity. I hope this letter doesn't upset you. I just thought you should know that what you did mattered. Not just for you, but for people like me who saw that maybe, possibly, we could come back from the worst things we've done. Wishing you all the best, Catherine. I read the letter 3 times, then showed it to Carmen. Wow, she said softly. That's heavy. Yeah. How do you feel about it? Honestly? Relieved. I've spent 2 years wondering if I went too far, if I was cruel, if buying that house and forcing Patricia to face consequences made me just as bad as her. And this woman, someone with no reason to lie to me, just told me I did the right thing. You did do the right thing, David. You held someone accountable while still recognizing they were human. That's not revenge. That's justice. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the drawer where I kept Robert's journal and photos. Reminders of where I'd been, what I'd survived, who I'd become. On our wedding day 6 months later, I stood at the altar, watching Carmen walk down the aisle, and thought about all the paths that had led here. The years of abuse I'd tolerated, the auction that changed everything, the house I'd won and lost and won again in different ways, the people who'd tried to break me and ended up forging me into someone stronger. Rosa was crying in the front row. Mark and Jerry sat together, both grinning like proud fathers. And in the very back I spotted someone I hadn't expected to see. Patricia Cameron. She caught my eye and mouthed, "Congratulations." I nodded once, acknowledging her presence without inviting more. She'd come to witness this moment, to see me happy, to close the circle in her own way. And then Carmen was standing beside me, and nothing else mattered. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, and I stopped listening to the words, just focused on Carmen's face, her smile, the absolute certainty in her eyes that we were choosing each other freely, honestly, without conditions or manipulations. When it was time for our vows, Carmen went first. "David, you taught me that strength isn't about being invulnerable. It's about being hurt and healing and refusing to let the hurt define you. I promise to choose you every day, to build you up instead of tearing you down, to see your worth even when you can't see it yourself, and to never, ever make you eat dinner with people who don't appreciate you." The crowd laughed. I was crying. Then it was my turn.
Carmen, I spent 12 years of my life trying to prove I was good enough for people who'd already decided I wasn't. You're the first person who looked at me and just saw me. Not my potential, not my income, not what I could do for you. Just me. And that's all I've ever wanted. So I promise to see you the same way. To love you for who you are, not who I need you to be. And to make you tamales whenever you want them, because apparently that's your love language. More laughter.
Carmen was crying now, too. I now pronounce you husband and wife. We kissed, and the crowd erupted in applause, and I felt something click into place. This was what family was supposed to feel like. This was what love looked like when it wasn't conditional. At the reception, Patricia approached me during a quiet moment. "I won't stay long," she said. "I just wanted to see you happy, to know that you made it through everything and came out whole. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." "I didn't invite you, Patricia." She smiled sadly. "I know. Carmen did. She said it was important for me to see what I'd almost destroyed, so I'd understand the full weight of my actions. She's a wise woman. Don't lose her." "I won't. I should go. But David, one last thing." She pressed something into my hand. "This is the last check I'll be sending you, $15,000. Everything I've saved from 2 years of working. It brings the total to $26,000. You said after $25,000 you'd forgive the rest, so I'm holding you to that." I looked at the check. Patricia Cameron's careful handwriting, everything she had to her name, given freely to make amends for something she could never fully repay. "Patricia, I can't take this. It's too much." "You can and you will, because I need to know that I made every effort to repair what I broke, and because you deserve it." She squeezed my hand. "Be happy, David. That's all Robert ever wanted for people he loved. And despite everything, I think he would have loved you." She left before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd and then out the door. I never saw her again. 3 years later, 2025. Carmen and I were sitting in our backyard, watching our daughter play in the grass. Sophia, 18 months old, with Carmen's eyes and my stubborn determination to do everything herself. "Dada, look!" She held up a flower she'd picked, beaming with pride. "That's beautiful, mija." My phone buzzed. An email from Mark. Subject line: "You're not going to believe this." I opened it. "David, remember Brandon Cameron? He was arrested yesterday for embezzling $50,000 from his employer. Apparently, he's been running the same scams his mother used to run. Multiple victims, all the same playbook. Fake emergencies, borrowed money, no repayment. Thought you'd want to know. Some people never learn. Mark." I showed Carmen the email. She shook her head. "That's sad. Patricia tried so hard to change, and her son learned nothing. Some people don't want to change. They just want the world to stop holding them accountable. Do you think you'll go to his trial?" "No. Brandon Cameron isn't my problem anymore. He's just a cautionary tale about what happens when you never learn from your mistakes." Sophia toddled over and climbed into my lap, still clutching her flower. "More!" she demanded. "More what, baby? More outside." Carmen laughed. "She definitely got your stubbornness. And your inability to accept no for an answer." We sat in the warm spring sunshine, our daughter playing in the grass, and I thought about how far I'd come from that first dinner at Patricia's house 14 today. Years ago, the scared young man who'd thought love meant accepting abuse, who'd confused patience with cowardice, who'd spent 12 years trying to prove his worth to people who'd already decided he had none. That man was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, more certain of his own value. Someone who'd learned that the only person who could define his worth was himself. "Do you ever regret it?" Carmen asked. "Any of it." "Regret what?" "The marriage. All of it. The years you spent with Ashley. The money Patricia stole. The fight to get it back." I watched Sophia chase a butterfly, her laughter bright and pure and untainted by the darkness I'd survived to bring her into the world. "No," I said, "because all of it brought me here. To you, to her, to this life. And I wouldn't trade this for anything." Carmen kissed me softly. Good answer. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown Oregon number. David, this is Ashley. I hope it's okay that I'm texting. Roberto is turning 3 today, and I wanted to share something with you. I told him his grandfather's real name and real story today, about how he changed himself to fit someone else's expectations, and how that was the wrong choice. Roberto asked me, did Grandpa ever get to be himself again? And I had to say no. But then I told him about someone who did, about you, about how you refused to be broken. He may not understand now, but someday he will. Thank you for showing my son, by example, what courage really looks like. I read the text twice, then set down my phone without responding. Ashley didn't need a response. She was doing what she needed to do, breaking the cycle, teaching her son the lessons her parents had failed to teach her. And me? I was just living my life, loving my wife, raising my daughter, filling my days with work that mattered and people who valued me and moments that reminded me why I'd fought so hard to get here. The Camerons had tried to break me. Instead, they'd rebuilt me into someone unbreakable. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Not hurting the people who hurt me, not taking their house or their money or their reputation, but becoming so completely, authentically myself that their opinions stopped mattering. I looked at Carmen and Sophia, at the life I'd built from the ashes of the life I'd lost, and I smiled. What are you thinking about? Carmen asked. How grateful I am for everything, even the bad stuff, especially the bad stuff. That's very zen of you. I'm a complicated man. You're really not, Carmen said, laughing. You're actually pretty simple. You just want to be valued for who you are. It's everyone else who made it complicated. She was right. It had always been that simple, and it had taken losing everything to figure it out.
If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to people who didn't respect you? How did you find the courage? Let me know. And remember, your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to convince them and start believing it yourself. For the next story, click the video on the left.